Good morning. My name is Zanku Armenian. This is a special meeting of the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee. This is day 2, Monday, February 29th, 2016. Today we have two parts to our agenda. We are continuing our deliberations from Friday. Friday we reviewed the social service programs for the next fiscal year allocations. Today we will be reviewing the capital allocations for 2016-2017 fiscal year. But before we get into that process, we have a special part to our meeting today. We will be reallocating $13,000 of funds that were returned by one of the program participants from last year's allocation of 2015 to 2016. We put out a special RFP process, so we'll be reviewing that. But before we get started any further, let's do a roll call and then we'll go from there.
Item 1, roll call. The agenda for the February 29, 2016 meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before Thursday, February 25, 2016 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Commission members: Avedissian?
Yes.
Markarian?
Yes.
Ramirez?
Yes.
Toshjian absent. Chair Armenian?
Yes.
Item 2, minutes. Minutes of the February 26, 2016 CDBG Advisory Committee meeting are unavailable. Item 3, oral communications. I do not have any cards. Item number 4, business agenda A, reports, information only. At 1, review proposal evaluation process and interview and deliberation protocol.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee. We submitted a report to the Advisory Committee regarding a change in our fiscal year 2015-2016 CDBG Social Service Program, and that one of our current agencies, Homonetmen Glendale chapter, submitted a letter informing the city that it will be returning its $13,000 grant to the city because of some advertisement and some marketing that was certainly kind of putting delay a little bit on the program. So with the program year halfway there, they decided to return the funds. The funds must be used for this current year, for fiscal year 15-16 programs. It cannot be rolled over to the next year. What staff had done is requested an RFP to agencies, issued an RFP to agencies to request proposals to utilize the $13,000 in CDBG funds. We received 4 proposals from 4 different agencies. One of the caveats of that was that we wanted to see what kind of services could be expanded from the agencies, what numbers could be increased, what type of activity could be improved with the funds. So we did put that in one of your spreadsheets as far as the proposal number to be served with the funds, and we did list out the 4 proposals. The 4 proposals are from Community Outreach ARS for $13,000. The Zone Program for $13,000, the Youth Employment Program by GYA for $13,000, and the Door of Hope Children and Youth Program for $13,000, for a total of $52,000. Available funds are $13,000. So we're again requesting committee to make a recommendation for these funds to be allocated to one or more of the agencies so that we could reprogram those and not lose those for the current year, and have the agencies expand the programs and get modifications to the contracts and budgets going.
And when do they have to be able to spend it by when?
June 30th.
June 30th. So they have a few months. Left. Okay. And I just wanted to, although Mr. Carrillo mentioned it for the sake of the public, I wanted to clarify one more time what this is that Homonetmen had applied for 2016-2017 funds for the same program. On Friday, they withdrew their proposal because they wanted to go back and take a look at what was happening and why they were not able to attract participants to their program last year. That was money that we then took and reallocated based upon our allocations for the upcoming year of 2016, 2017. One of the reasons they did that on Friday in terms of withdrawing their the next year proposal was because they had to return these funds, which are 2015, 2016 funds for the same program. So that's how the $13,000 is coming available. So I guess I'll open it to comments from committee members. I have some thoughts that I've examined the proposals as well. I assume you guys have as well. These are abbreviated proposals because of the quick turnaround, so they're really meant to look to see how the applicants can expand current programs, not come up with brand new programs for the 13.
And you need a motion, evidently, to reprogram these funds?
Yeah, we will eventually do what we did on Friday, actually, and what we'll do later this afternoon for capital. We'll decide whether we want to split this 4 ways, 2 ways, 1 way, whatever.
And then make the motion?
Yeah, and then make the motion, yeah. So first I'm seeking comments based on review of proposals.
I'd like to see the 13,000 kind of allocated to those organizations that provide similar or pretty much close type of scope of work, such as, at youth risk or some kind of an educational program, because we allocated the amount to home management for the after-school tutoring. Mm-hmm. So if we could kind of see this fund benefiting another organizations such as Zone or even ARS, because the type of education, ESL classes, I also see them under educational programs. So that's how I would like to see this allocated, more under the same kind of scope of work. Not just expanding, but I know that both organizations do offer a lot to the community as far as education, as well as they're at capacity for what we have offered funding-wise. Mm-hmm. So if they can benefit from this, I'd be happy to see them use this.
Yeah, and based on, I'll just highlight this, based on staff report of the 4 programs, 2 of them, ARS and Glendale Youth Alliance, are actually, their proposal calls for expanding the number of people served under the programs. For Zone and Door of Hope, they're looking at expanding, let me split them apart. The Salvation Army is proposing to expand their hours of their program, not necessarily reaching more participants, but I guess the theory behind it being that if you expand your hours, maybe you'll attract more participants, but they're not actually committing to that. Door of Hope, I believe, is a newer program that they're trying to implement. Is that correct, Mr.
Correct.
Correa?
That's correct.
Okay. Other comments?
Well, I would like to see it go to a youth program, and but the Zone after-school program and the funds have to be expended by June. Is there enough time?
Committee member Ramirez, yes, Zone could utilize certainly, the funds would be expended in that amount of time because they're expanding their hours, so we would have expenditures right away on that. They don't have to hire people or increase any type of other personnel. They would just expand their times with their staff.
And is that a demonstrated need, expanding?
Yes.
Time?
Yes, it is. Especially in lieu of, as the chair mentioned, the Home on Edmond ARA chapters after-school program. This would hopefully, we would work together with the 2 groups to make sure that there's any referrals or anything would come in, be covered by the Zone program.
I think I mentioned earlier, and I have a concern about the after-school program not being after school. I think the Home Men's program was 6 to 7. That might have affected their applications. I would like to see it all go to one place rather than divide. I think we had this conversation about 5,000 here and 5,000 there last year. I would like to see it stay with the program kind of from which it came, where we allocated it to begin with, which was youth and after-school programs. And I think the Door of Hope has a significant youth program period. It's not just after school. in the zone, of course. I think it's the only program in that area, right?
Correct.
My thoughts is send the money to one program.
Mr. Avedisian?
I also would like to have it, the funds go to any of those organizations that has truly, with the school and after school and the kids programs or anything in that level. And knowing the zone program, and I believe, and I'm pretty confident that they can utilize whatever funds they get. They can utilize it, and I know those kids can use it. At the same time, I was looking at thinking maybe the Youth Alliance, that also a good program. It helps out a lot of our youth and keeps them out of the streets and the trouble. So that might be something good to have. Of course, if you look at it on the education end of it, ARS also does likewise program educating the adults, still working in that direction and helping out, especially the newcomers to the city, and helping out to grow within the community and build up their new lives. So I'll be open to either direction, and I would think maybe we should share that fund, the 13,000, to maybe two organizations. So let them have two organizations have the part of the funds.
And also because they have such short period to
Easier to
use,
spend.
spend. 13,000 may be not may be difficult for just one organization to really try to kind of spend it in 2 months or 3 months. Mr. Correa, I mean,
They would have
one
submit-
organization, would they be able to benefit completely in such short period if we were to fund it, let's say, to all two zone,
Well, Committee Member Markarian, just...
expand it
just
as
that-
quickly?
Right. One of the items, if I look at the budgets for the zone, for example, their expansion is certainly hours and also computer time. So they're requesting capital request for supplies for new computers for $10,200. So they'd be able to spend that
This
quickly
is
right away.
Salvation Army.
The Salvation Army. And the rest is some training costs. So they're willing to really just pay for operations for their expansion of the program.
So that way, with one action, they would, in theory, spend the funds and then show the accompanying. So using it for purchasing computers is allowed, even though this is a social service program? That's not a capital expenditure?
Yes, Mr. Chair, for social services, computers are an eligible cost. And again, I think what Salvation Army thought was they would anticipate questions like this, and from staff, they would be able to spend the money very quickly. And then the new computers, if you've been to their place, they use those for all the programs, including all the tutoring programs and academic programs. It's part of a program called DORA, and that's their standard tutoring academic program.
Yeah, I'm deliberating in my head between, you have one organization that's showing 30, ARS showing proposed additional number of people served of 30, which I like, to be able to show that sort of metric of being able to serve more people. I think it's a leap of faith that Salvation Army is going to serve more because they're showing 0, but they're also, obviously, as you stated, they're showing that they're going to use it, enhance their equipment so they can serve current people better with some hours expansion, hoping that has a net effect of serving more people. But I think they're, based on what you said, particularly the primary thrust of what they're saying is serving the current people better versus additional people served through the funds, whereas the ARS is showing 30 people more. Youth Alliance is showing 10 more people served, and I think that's through their expenditure on more staff time, right?
Correct.
Yep. So my personal point of view is I'd probably split it 2 ways. I like to always reinforce additional people served as kind of a push. We want to reach more people with the funds that we have. So I was thinking of 50/50 split between ARS and Salvation Army was where I was coming down. But obviously, I'm open to opinions.
Well, I still think it should stay with youth, and I'm going to make a motion that we reprogram the $13,000 to the zone after-school program.
Second on that.
Is there a second?
Would that help them reach out to more children next year? I mean, with buying new computers, hopefully that'll help them kind of reach out to more kids.
Committee member
I mean, I'm
Karen-
just trying to see how.
Sure.
Or like serving.
Yeah, I mean, you
serving.
remember, I wanted to also remind that we expanded their funding because we allocated
Exactly.
home and funds on Friday for the next fiscal year. So we actually expanded their amount for the actual program itself, which hopefully is going to result.
We did for ARS also, so.
Yeah, but we also cut everyone back last year. So anyway, so I think where I was landing is if you give them kind of some of the.
But we need a second before we can be
Right, and there
continuing
was-
the
Yes,
discussion.
there was no
So there was no
There's no second
There's
on
no
that.
second.
Is that,
Yeah.
was that your thinking?
Well, I really think it can be split between two organizations. I'm split between, Youth Alliance and ARS. I'm thinking both are kind of serving with an educational focus. So
Well,
definitely, I like to see zone receiving 50% of that, but the rest,
well,
I'd like to see either Youth or Youth Alliance or ARS receiving
well,
that.
the accommodation that City Council made to help us make these decisions was they pulled the STAR program because we had this discussion how difficult it is to be giving 5,000 here, 5,000 there, and that some of our organizations didn't apply because 5,000 doesn't help them. And so if we're staying with our same argument that we had last year when we had the problem with allocating and the concern, not so much the problem, with allocating bits of funds, seems to me that our direction from City Council and the reason why they pulled and decided to fund the STAR program, for instance, which I think is a terrific fund and it should be continued. 13,000 would have really helped them, but they didn't apply. So I still think that we're kind of going back on our discussion last year and maybe not really confirming with what the City Council was
Yeah.
trying to help us.
But that's not a new funding, so that's a little different. I agree with
It's
you.
money.
If it's a new
It's
funding, I
reprogrammed
would
money.
not like to just do a 5 here, 5 there, but this is like an additional, same year, same program, just an additional few thousand to help them, provide more services.
Well, we can redefine it any way we choose, so I have
Yeah.
my position, so.
Okay, so there's no second on that motion. Is there a different motion?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to allocate the 13,000 to two organizations, being Salvation Army and ARS, equally divided to have 7,500 each to make that allocation, put both organizations
6,500.
6,500. Yeah. Paying more out of the pocket, $6,500 to each organization, and I'm sure that both organizations will serve the community and their programs better at this point. And this is additional money that it's going to be just added to their budgets, I think.
They have only a few months to spend it, so
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, and discussion? Further discussion?
Well, I'll support it just to make sure that the zone gets some funding, but I still have my concerns about that, but I will support it.
Okay, let's go ahead and put the motion to a vote.
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes?
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, just to summarize that, so the allocation is $6,500 for ARS and $6,500 for the zone program. Thank you.
So next, we'll move on to our regularly scheduled agenda.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we do have the agencies here for our review of the capital improvement projects. We do have some good news on that front. We do have, because of our increased allocation of CDBG funds, so instead of the $412,000, we have $476,000, $605,000, which means we're still $207,815 over our budget. There are 6 proposals that have been submitted for capital projects, and we do have them here for our interviews. We would certainly, again, want to proceed with our procedure for giving them 5 minutes for their presentation, 10 minutes for questions, and then evaluation forms completed after each presentation. If additional time is needed, certainly the privy of the committee to ask additional questions, or staff can answer additional questions as well.
Okay, and I just wanted to state that one of the applicants is the Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and so Committee Member Markarian will, as we have done in the past, when we've had the same situation, she stepped out of the meeting in order to recuse herself because of conflict of interest, since that is her employer. So you'll see one committee member go to the back room during that process.
May I have a question, just kind of curious? Since the mic is heard back there, are you allowed to be part of the
Deliberation?
Well,
I know you can't deliberate, but can you be part of the? Why can't she just stay here if she has to go back there and sit by herself, and you can still hear?
I was advised by our attorneys to do so.
To listen back there. That doesn't make sense.
That way she can't wink at us. Yeah, so we'll just for
Or text us.
Yeah, abundance of caution, she will go to the back. It is a public meeting, so everyone can access this meeting both now as well as later on in taped format. So in that case, it's not an issue that she hears us, but it's important that there be zero communication during this process, so that everything is kept clean.
Well, I would think, like, when I'm making a comment and we're on different sides, we may be, that, it has an influence. And if she can't vote on it, but essentially we tend to vote on the whole picture anyway. So anyway, it just seems to me
I actually do not vote when it comes to allocation of the dollars for Glendale Adventist.
But I know, but I just seems to me like when you have to step out, because you can't be part of the deliberation, you can't be part of the discussion either.
So how do we, the part where we come in, we'll look at all the amounts, right? We'll play with these amounts based upon available funding. If Glendale Adventist were to be part of that mixture, because at that point, Committee Member Markarian, I presume, would be back for the overall discussion, correct?
Well, Mr. Chair, what we've done is we've done individual votes on the funding allocations. So Committee Member Markarian would not be voting on the Adventist proposal. If that is one of the projects that is recommended, it would be a separate motion for each one, and we'll handle them individually for each project. And discussions regarding Adventist, when that comes up on the screen, I believe Committee Member Markarian will need to recuse herself as well.
Okay, well, I just want to raise that as a point of order.
Yeah, we have actually done the same for
I
the
know you
last few
have.
years.
That's why I raised
and
it.
it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know about that, but.
So let's start with our interview process.
We just want to read it for the record, the next
Sure.
agenda item.
Next agenda item is item number 4B at 2, conduct interviews with nonprofit capital improvement applicants and deliberate and approve funding recommendations.
Okay. First on my list, I have Catholic Charities.
Will it work?
Put it up there, Steve.
The chair, pull that chair in there. Yeah.
You can start, Sandra.
Good morning, committee. It's a great pleasure to be in front of you again. My name is Sandra Inez, Regional Director for Catholic Charities.
I'm Steve Rittner with RMCA Architects.
So I just, before we really got into some of the main points here today, I just wanted to give you a quick background on how it is that we found some of the damage that is happening in the facility that we are looking to fix with some of these funds. Back in 2012, there had been some cracks that were noticed in the facility, but due to staffing just believing that it was just settling of the building, it was not addressed at the time. In 2015, in April of 2015, they actually had a plumber come out due to the fact that there was just backing up of some toilets in the facility, and that plumber is the one who informed us of the fact that indeed there was some disintegration, some leaking that was occurring in some of the piping and the sewage lines. So at that point in time, there was a temporary fix where the pipes had actually been snaked, but indeed that was a temporary fix. So at this time, I'm going to let Steve speak a little bit about the intricacies of what it is that we're looking to move forward with.
Thanks, Sandra. Just a quick little background. Our firm and myself, particularly, I've been involved with the Glendale Community Center since 2004. We did a couple of upgrade renovation projects back in 2006. Also, we're the architects for Catholic Charities Guadalupe Center out in Canoga Park, which was cited in the background package that you have, which we've went through four phases of construction since 1997. And anyway, so we're happy to be working on the Glendale Community Center again. The main item of concern is the leaking sewer pipe, which Sandra mentioned. So we're anticipating that it's in the front part of the building near San Fernando Road, and we're anticipating that about up to 35 feet of it are going to need to be removed. Probably there was a camera run through it, but it's going to probably have to be done again just to kind of assess the condition of the line further up the way. But the pipe it's a cast iron pipe, original to the building, about 20 years old. It's completely deteriorated, apparently, so it cannot be sleeved anymore. It's got to be removed and replaced. So what that's going to entail is saw cutting out the concrete slab. Let me back up. So Sandra said that it's been going on for a little while, apparently. So there has been a little bit of settling of the slab in that area. There is some cracking in the floor tiles, so probably that's in the slab also. There's also a little bit of cracking in a wall at a door adjacent to that area. The door into one of the storage room does not close properly, so there's been a little bit of settling. So the slab is going to have to be saw cut and removed, and the dirt removed, and either it needs to be dried out or the dirt needs to be replaced with drier dirt, and then the line will be replaced with a plastic pipe. Then we'll backfill and re-pour the slab, and there's the vinyl composition floor tile is going to have to be replaced in a couple of the rooms in that general vicinity. It's the up front area where loaves and fishes, yeah. So, and there'll be some patching of the drywall and some touch-up painting in that area. The second component of the work is replacing the light fixtures in about half of the building. You can see it's the kind of yellow shaded area. It's about 50 to 60 light fixtures, and they are generally 2 foot by 4 foot fluorescent fixtures that are recessed in the acoustical tile ceiling. In the corridor area, they are surface mounted. It's a fire rated corridor. So we'd like to replace those with LED type light fixtures. Those are use about 50% less wattage than the current old fluorescent bulbs that are basically original to the building, or the fixtures are original to the building. The blue area here are the main restrooms, and we are looking to replace the plumbing fixtures in those restrooms with new, more water-efficient fixtures. So, let's see, I think we have about, I don't have the numbers right at my right hand, but about 6 sinks perhaps, and about 5 water closets and 2 urinals, plus or minus. And those are all original to the building. The sinks right now are just, you can turn on the water and they can just continuously flow. So we want to put in the new sinks with new reduced flow faucets that'll probably use about 4 times less water, and also have a timed shutoff. Similarly with the urinals and the water closets, they'll be much more energy or water efficient. The urinals will probably use about half the water, and the water closets 25% to 50%, and we may utilize a dual flush type fixture. The last item is a sort of a little bit of sprucing up. We're going to try to repaint as much as we can inside the building. I think it hasn't been painted since 20 years ago, so we're going to sort of focus probably on the yellow area there, the front customer areas, as well as the big rooms here that are occupied by the refugee services. So that's about it. Thank you for your consideration.
I have a couple questions of you. You've mentioned a few different things here. So there's sewer line, the lights, bathroom fixtures, and painting and patching.
Yes.
Okay. So as you're aware, every year we don't have enough funding to go around for everyone's projects. How would you prioritize those if you were to receive less than what you've proposed?
The first thing would be the sewer line replacement, because that, as I mentioned, is causing some settling, and that needs to be taken care of. So that's the first priority.
And then out of the other ones, which one's next?
Maybe the lighting fixtures, and I know we haven't really decided. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sandra?
Yeah, ideally, we might start with some of the fixtures in the restrooms, so there can be some conservation of water.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that can be said, though, for the lighting as well. But that's probably where we would focus some of our interest.
Which of those has a greater impact on the quality of life kind of the facility, or for people using the facility?
Quality of life?
Yeah, meaning like, are the fixtures leaking, or are they are functional, it's just that they're not water efficient?
Right, they're both. So they're not water efficient, and we've had plumbers come out to assist with a number of leakages that we've had in the past. They've all been patched and are workable at the moment, but eventually they're going to have to be replaced nonetheless.
And what about the light fixtures? Are they not functioning at all, or are there only some of them functioning, or are they functioning, they're just old?
They are functioning, they're just out of date.
Okay.
Yeah, and very energy inefficient.
So it's more, that one's more about energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and also mainly energy efficiency, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Other questions?
I have a question. So looking at the scope of work, you have so many, areas of improvement that you like to do. I mean, I see kitchen, I see paint, fixtures, ceiling lights. I mean, this is a lot of work, and you have an estimate of 95,000. I mean, is that accurate? I mean, because sometimes with our experience, organizations come back and say, well, now we need more, and we can only do this area because, we don't have enough, or the funding wasn't sufficient. Even if we were to fund you the entire 95, let's say, there has been cases when organizations came back and said, well, based on some more analysis, and there's actually an additional 50,000 needed, so we can't do the entire thing. We're only going to allocate the 95 to, let's say, for the plumbing. I'm just looking at the scope of work. This is so much work, and you have an estimate of 90. I mean, you're asking for 95. I just want to make sure that you'll have enough to do all this. Even if we were to fund you the entire 95, it just kind of makes me nervous to see all this work that will, hold you accountable to complete with the 95.
Well, no, we did look at it, and we're pretty conservative with doing our cost estimating, and we've also noticed in the last year or so on a lot of our work that prices have been higher because times are good and contractors are typically charging more. So we have figured that in, and that is why, I mean, we've kept the amount of work anticipated for the sewer line just to the front portion. It may turn out that more of that line farther back is not great either, but we've just kind of confined it to the worst part in that area. And then in regards to the light fixtures, I mean, we said about 50 to 60 fixtures, and that's pretty much just a straight replacement. There's not any more, I mean, the electrical needs to be hooked up, but there's not a bunch of electrical work that needs to be done, because there's a straight change out of fixtures, so there shouldn't be tons of labor involved with that. And similarly with the plumbing fixtures, we're not modifying any of the piping in the wall. It's just taking out the fixture and putting in new fixtures. It's still work, but it's not that involved. We're not getting into, in those cases, really tearing into the building. We are doing that for the sewer line, but not for the fixture change out. And then, like we talked about just now, the painting is, maybe kind of the gravy. If we've got to do the sort of functional stuff first, and especially the deferred maintenance, the maintenance item on the sewer first, and then, the painting is kind of the last one on the list, as, we'll do as much as we can do with what could be left over.
And just for the sewer, what would be the cost? I see a lot of itemized. I mean, I see what is it, like 15,000? Is that what the...
For which one?
Just the sewer.
The sewer. Well, that's kind of broken up in different categories.
I know, I see it in different areas.
So I was looking at your budget, and when I added up the sewer stuff, it looked like it was 28,000, which includes demolition, excavation, backfill.
Yeah, that's about 10. And then all the interior patching and the resilient flooring, that's another 4, so that's about 14.
So I'm looking at your budget. So I was looking at the 9,500, item number 2, which is demolition, excavation, backfill. Item number 3, which is concrete, builds.
Yes, yeah, I missed that.
And then on the next page,
well, we've got about 4,000 also for the patching and resilient flooring. So that puts you up to about 17.
Yeah.
I don't have my calculator, sorry.
Yeah, so 18.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mistakenly added the plumbing fixtures.
Okay, and then about another 523, and then you have all the, the contractor's fee and all that stuff that's added into that too. So.
Well, I'm looking at your RMCA cost estimate.
Yes.
Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, yes, I am. But then in addition to that, there's a portion of the general requirements and the contractor's fee. All that's based on that portion of the work too.
Okay.
So that just adds.
So then what's your estimate of just the sewer line?
The sewer line, well, I think we were up to about 23 just with the just with the work on this, our broken down estimate.
Right.
And I'll just put on another 10%, and that's not even the contingency. So I put it near 30,000 for that work. And then again, but that's including a portion of the general conditions and such that are on your other, your line item budget form. You know, overhead and profit and all that stuff. That's all, you know, a portion of that is allocated to the sewer work and all the other work too.
Yeah.
So,
Other questions?
What, if I may, what kind of a timeline you're looking at if, say, today you got the funding? What kind of timeline that you're looking at to complete, especially at least the plumbing portion of it, the sewer line?
well, I think there was a little bit of a timeline given in,
Those are just the timelines, but
Yeah.
realistically,
Yeah.
what you're going to be able to actually physically complete it?
well, we're going to have to, you know, it's going to take some, we'll have to probably, you know, get back with Catholic Charities and refine the scope of work a little bit. So I think there was 2 weeks to do CDs to get it into the building department. So I would say probably by the time we get everything, you know, a little bit of preliminary work, you know, at least about a month to do that. We did speak with a couple folks in your building department. They seemed, you know, there's no entitlements or anything like that. So I think that the timeline for the plan checking was maybe, you remember, Sandra, was about a month, 2 to 3 weeks perhaps. Was it 3 weeks? So say another month, and then, I mean, well, you're just talking about the sewer line now?
Yeah, well, that's the main
Yeah,
portion
yeah.
of the major problem.
Yeah.
Everything else is
well,
somewhat...
Well, I know
cosmetic.
Sandra's going to want it to go quickly because that's going to be, that's going to impact the program up in the front.
Reason-
But probably 2 to 4 weeks should be, I mean, should be
Permitting.
should be less than 4 weeks, you know, it's just...
So within the next, say, 3 months or so, you can
I mean,
at
the
least
intent
take
is
care
to
of
get
the
it.
plumbing issue.
Yeah, no, the intent is to get it done. So, I mean, our office is able to start working on it immediately once we get the, you know, once we get the green light to proceed. And, you know, we'll have to choose a contractor that is also able to do it right away. So,
And so if
that sound about fair, Sandra? Yeah.
if you only get partial funding, which is something we'll be dealing with all the proposals, but at least enough to get the sewer line and let's say the plumbing done or something like that, are you going to defer the rest of what you're proposing, or would you come up with funds to complete the job?
Well, ideally, we would come up with funds to meet the remaining portion of the job. We are currently in the midst of 2 or 3 fundraisers, so if indeed those go well, then they will be directed towards this project. It is an important project to us, but if it is not, then it may just be deferred to another year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just, when was the last time that you received capital improvement funds? After 2006?
As far as I know, I think 2006,
Yeah.
plus or minus.
So for, what, 10 years you haven't received any funds?
Not for capital
For
improvement.
capital improvements, right. So it seems to me like 95,000 is cheap compared if you would have been applying for 100,000 every year.
That's right.
And getting 25 maybe. So I don't have any problem with it. I think that you're doing exceptional service to the community, and I have no problem with any of the project. I
Well,
think it's very, very important, and it must be completed.
I think if I just thought of something, one of you mentioned how some of the like the lighting fixtures and plumbing fixtures, how that improvement might help. One way, and you know, it's not a whole lot perhaps, but the fact that they're more energy efficient, and I mean, it will cost less in utilities and maintenance and such, that Catholic Charities can put more towards their programs and helping their patrons.
Yeah, that was me. I was just differentiating, though, between that and like the sewer line, where if sewer line gets worse, you don't have bathrooms anymore, which renders your facility.
Or you're calling the plumber out every week, which is not good either.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Chair, excuse me for
Yep.
interrupting you. I just want to clarify a few things, because they do break out in the budget all the costs that are basically the profit, the general conditions, the bonds, everything else. And we kind of estimate in staff about 18% of what a cost is from the architect, 18%. And of course, there's also 10% contingency. So the figure is about 18%
On top.
on top, and then 10% of that was contingency, which we always like to have for the extra cost.
Yeah, so if you do 30,000 for sewer, which is the approximate amount that he mentioned, and then add
18%.
18% on that. to get-
10% above that, just to be safe.
Yep.
Now, I did have a question for the Catholic Charity staff. You mentioned you have 32,000 unduplicated individuals coming in to the facility, and then you mentioned that that's going to grow by 5% more. What's the reason why? If you could speak to the mic,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Well, what we plan to do is add programming. So because of the programming, we anticipate that that will grow some of the population. Currently, what's in there now is on the latter half of the building is primarily immigration at this point, and we are seeking funding for new programming to consolidate them and add other programming on the other part of the building. So if we get funded for that program, we anticipate a larger amount of individuals at or below poverty level coming into the facility.
What kind of program are you?
At this point, we have requested funding for telehealth as well as possibly mental health.
And telehealth is a health clinic, or is that?
No. So what it is basically there are these little boxes that are put into individuals' homes, and what happens is, depending on whether or not their insurance company is addressing them or not, and if not, then we've already explored other avenues. But basically, it's health that is put into these little boxes and monitored by outside nursing agency.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and committee member Markarian will step out for this
I'll
part.
just recuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee members. So my name is Bruce Nelson. I'm the Director of Community Services at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. I'm happy to be here to speak about the Senior Wellness Program at Glendale Adventist and what this is going to mean for our community. We're currently in the process of transforming a community center resource into a senior center. And that process has recently included putting in ADA bathrooms, which I just had a chance to tour. I understand those are completed, and we're waiting for the sign-off or something to that effect. Well, they look completed. Anyway, they look really good. So that's a wonderful, asset. Obviously, this building was built in 1926, and so consequently what was there was not adequate to serve the needs that we're seeing develop. So the senior program is based around a senior wellness program, or the senior center is based around a senior wellness program that has about 3,000 members in it currently, and it's continuing to expand dramatically. Obviously in Glendale, that's a concern that we have, and we're wanting to continue to address. While Glendale Adventist Medical Center is a non-for-profit hospital, our primary care is acute patient care in the hospital. But we are positioned to be able to also, because of our position in the community, to address a lot of preventive care and other related healthcare concerns that extend outside of our immediate mission. And that's what the Senior Wellness Program will do. So you'll see before you a request, and this isn't a particularly exotic request. It is for path of travel. You'll notice that we did, in fact, engage an architect to take a look at this back in August, and that was shortly after our last CDBG initiative began, looking at what's going on there at the hospital. And we discovered that the path of travel had some serious deficits, and we had to do some important things in order to bring it up to code. As you know, path of travel is one of those ADA requirements that's really important. As a matter of fact, it just rises to the top in terms of priority for virtually any organization because of the tremendous liability that exists around it. So we had a preliminary impression that our path of travel was not that far off and that we were going to be able to put in some barriers and some fencing and so forth, and we were going to be fine. But when the architect took a look at it and then compared it against what's required now under ADA statute, it was clear that we had to do something quite different than what we initially expected. And this is really meant that we're not able to use the facility for the senior programs. It really prevents us from doing that. So we need to get this completed. We need to do it as quickly as possible, and we've already begun the process just so we can get a jump on it. So we've already got architect, and we've already got surveyor engaged, and they're already coming forward with recommendations on what to do so that we'll be completely ready to go by the time that the funding for this actually gets approved for what, to whatever extent that it does, and assuming that it does. Nonetheless, that ADA path of travel will involve building some ramps and rerouting some of the travel and building some, banisters and so forth that will allow us to be in complete compliance. Right now, all of the services that we would be doing for the senior program are being done in our main auditorium and elsewhere in the community with our community partners. So there's a lot of that we want to be able to move into this facility, and then much more that will develop as a consequence of our ability to fully use that facility. And then, of course, we have plans, and I've shared this with you before, for completely transforming that center into something that will include a teaching kitchen and health screening activities and an array of other resources that will be important to seniors. So that's what we're up to, and that's why our request comes to you this morning.
And so I have a couple of questions. So it's hard to tell from the pictures, but are there no ramps currently? Are they all stairs?
Where those stairs are in the pictures is where the ramps will go. There is a ramp currently. Unfortunately, it does not satisfy ADA requirements. So we have to relocate the ramp.
In what sense?
Pardon?
In what sense does it
not? It doesn't have the right grade.
Grade, okay.
And then it doesn't have the right access to the right space. Have to both have the right grade and access to the correct space in order to fully qualify for ADA.
Right. And so my second question is, I know last year we allocated funds for the doors, right?
That's
The
right.
automated doors. So those have not been done yet because of this issue?
That's right. So the doors are immediately in front of this space. So clearly, we're not going to do those doors. And actually, the doors are included as a part of this project. So they'll be done at the same time. The doors are immediately in front of this space. If we were to tear out, demolish the concrete and so forth leading up to this and do all this construction work, it would not be a good thing for new doors that we had just put in. So we need to wait until we have this work done before we put in brand new doors.
And Mr. Correa, is there a deadline in which last year's funds need to be expended by?
Mr. Chair, the funds are generally granted for 1 year, and an extension request are usually requested by the agency. And if time permitting, then the committee will need to approve any extension request for their proposals.
Okay, we're not up against that yet.
June 30th would be the time.
June 30th. So when would you get this work done in order to, would you have to put in an extension request?
Yes, we will. Because this will be a part of the entire project.
And so what, can you, for the sake of those listening in the audience, state what the timeline is?
Yes, so we'll be ready. We'll have all the architectural plans. With me is our Director of Construction, Ms. Haggerty, and Lori, if you could, Alfonso.
Hello, I'm Laurie Alfano. I'm with JLL Construction. So we've already engaged a surveyor to begin the process, and we've engaged an architect. The architect should start the design process about March 7th. We are looking to, then we have to go out to design plans, get the scope of work, everything, develop the drawings, and we're looking at that to be completed about the end of May. From May, then we'll have to go into the city for review and permitting. We're anticipating construction to be starting, we have to go through the bidding process, and that would start at the end of July and into August. Construction itself, we are anticipating it to start the beginning of September. We put a 5 to 6 month schedule together for that. Could be sooner. It just depends on, we've got a lot of coordinating to do because it's right at the front entrance of our rehab center. So there's a lot of coordination to do there. And then once you start the digging, we run into something. So we gave it about a 5 to 6 month schedule, construction schedule.
And we should add to that Glendale Medical Center did not include all of the costs leading up to the actual beginning of, the bidding and construction. All of that is being paid for by Glendale Medical Center. So that's not included in here.
You've been investing in this facility separate and apart, over and above, I should say, what the CDBG's been granting in the past on this.
That's correct.
Mr. Carrillo, in terms of extensions, normally how long is that granted for?
Usually, Mr. Chair, it's usually another year extension. But I would want to point out this, Mr. Nelson pointed out that they already started this process actually over last year. And when the city, it's more or less a city requirement to do your, when you do interior improvements, you need to do the exits, path of travel, we call that. So certainly it's part of a city. We've been working with Adventist to work on this since last year. And so I think in a year we should be done.
In fact, that's what happened. When the city approached us about developing path of travel, that's when all of this came up and we realized that we needed.
Right. Okay. Other questions?
Just to follow up on that, well, if the city's requiring you to do that, wouldn't you just, and I guess that's why you've started already, wouldn't you have to fund that yourself?
If we can't get support from CDBG, then we will fund it ourselves. However, whatever funding would be paid for by Glendale Medical Center will come out of the capital allocation for the hospital, which is already more than spoken for. In other words, our capital allocation to the hospital is already far exceeded, that is to say, our requests far exceed what we're able to accommodate. So it simply means that there's other healthcare resources that we're unable to provide for the community as a consequence of taking capital out of the hospital's capital budget. Because otherwise that budget would be used to purchase equipment and supplies, or actually equipment and facilities for patient care.
So in other words, if you weren't changing the use of the center, you would need this access, this ADA access.
That's what brought it to light. That's what brought it to light. There's no question that this can be incredibly important for seniors. ADA access for seniors just is a given. It's got to, those two things go together. It probably never would have come to light as an issue had we not actually been engaged in changing the project as it is.
Right. Doors or overall?
Pardon?
Changing the project overall or just the doors?
Well, the doors was a part of the overall.
Yeah.
But that's really what triggered the conversation and then brought this all to light.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Markarian can come back into the... Hoping you'd hear me.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to invite up Door of Hope for their floor improvement project.
Well, good morning, CDBG Commission and staff. I'm thankful to be able to be here again today. I apologize, my throat is a little bit scratchy. I have a cold, but my name is Tim Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Door of Hope. I've worked with homeless families and children for a little over 25 years now. Door of Hope has been around for 30 years, helping homeless families transition out of homelessness into permanent housing. And Door of Hope is very grateful for your wonderful support over the years, and this is a vital organization on the front lines helping homeless families homeless families that are homeless as a result of domestic violence. Homelessness is getting a lot of attention these days. It's in the front center of a lot of attention in Los Angeles and even in our city here. It's a human disaster, it's an urgency, and it's a state of emergency. In the 2015 homeless count right here in Glendale, 86 persons of the 208 homeless counted were persons and families. 44, which is 21%, are children under the age of 18, and 63 or 30% were identified as being homeless due to domestic violence. 52 or 25% of the population in Glendale are homeless women and children that are homeless as a result of domestic violence. This is something that is an urgent need right here in our city, and Door of Hope is a solution to helping homeless families and families that are homeless as a result of domestic violence. Our program is very comprehensive. It's not just housing, but it's actually comprehensive case management, life skills classes, budget and finance, parenting, healthy relationships, DV prevention, counseling, and a comprehensive after-school program for the children. We help them get into permanent housing, and then we follow up with families afterwards. Last year, Door of Hope was able to serve 67 families, including 128 children. And on Friday, hopefully you were all here to be able to hear Jana, who is just one example of the many families that have had their lives transformed through the Door of Hope. Door of Hope is a model for restoration for homeless women and children and those that are homeless as a result of domestic violence. Getting on to the capital improvement project, as you deliberate about the capital improvement project, I wanted to give you that background about Door of Hope so that you were understanding that our proposal isn't just about flooring, which flooring is very important, but this flooring contributes to the overall success of the program to help homeless families and children. We're extremely grateful for your partnership and the Door of Hope and the funding that you've helped fund Door of Hope has been proven successful in our previous projects and funding well spent. Door of Hope and Verdugo Housing Corporation are very strategic in our preventative maintenance and stewardship of the facilities and the few resources that we do have. All of our major infrastructure upgrades have been completed, and the remaining projects are more preventative maintenance and for sanitary reasons. We're asking for funding for flooring, which is currently carpet, which is very unhealthy, unsanitary, and worn. In researching the best solutions, commercial-grade laminate flooring was our best option. The flooring is easy to maintain, clean, and prevents unsanitary, unhealthy conditions long term. This is extremely important that we have sanitary environment for the children where they can play. And if you can imagine a baby crawling on the floor, learning how to crawl on a sanitary floor where carpet is extremely difficult to keep clean and sanitary. It's a very basic, straightforward project. It doesn't have any permits required or any design review or any significant challenges. It's pretty basic. And as you can see, Door of Hope's an excellent financial standing with our financial matrices that you have. We've done really well in stewardship of the resources that we have. We have extremely high measurable outcomes from previous and current CDBG projects, and we'd just like for you to prioritize, request that you please prioritize Door of Hope flooring and for the Door of Hope's homeless families and children. This is truly a community partnership project. Door of Hope partners with Verdugo Housing Corporation, which is another nonprofit here in the city that is the owners of the building, and Door of Hope provides the supportive services. I want to recognize Bill Boyd. He's the president of the Verdugo Housing Corporation, who's with us here today if you have any questions for him. And I also have with me Larry Batten, who's our facilities manager, who may be able to answer any questions specific to flooring, as he's had extensive experience working with flooring previous to working at Door of Hope. Hopefully our application was clear, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
I have one question. When was the last time you changed your floorings?
It was 2008, 2009 when the carpeting was put in, and the carpet was put in as just a measure to be able to quickly just to be able to make it a place where it had hardwood floors, but they were really deteriorating in such bad condition that they weren't able to fix them, and it was the cheapest, inexpensive, quick way to just cover the floors with carpeting, but we've since learned it's not a very good solution for the population we work with.
And you mentioned 16 units. This would cover 16 units. Are all those units occupied currently?
We are just finishing our plumbing project, which was funded last year, and so we have 2 units that are in being done with that. We're trying to keep them full, even with the construction. So they are 13 families. 13 of the units are for families with children, and at least 11 or 12 of them are full right now.
And you're asking this entire project to be funded through CDBG, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions? And I just wanted to, in the package, so you've been receiving capital funding for this facility over the years, and it looks like about $700,000 since 2011, based on the math of what I added up here, which is an average of about $140,000 per funding cycle. And so the question I have is, on this building, any large building normally would have some sort of reserve study or some sort of study done to say what are the capital improvements, what's the lifespan of different elements of a building, so that you can start to save in a rainy day fund and in terms of a reserve fund for things that you know you'll have to replace at certain points in time. Do you have such a study for this facility?
We have been very proactive in looking at preventative maintenance and looking at what our priority needs in the future and currently, and that's what we've been coming to the CDBG Commission for, and that's why we've done actually a majority of all the major infrastructure improvements. The uniqueness of the ownership of the building, owned by a nonprofit agency, which their only source of income is the rent that we pay, which is very extremely minimal, barely covers the taxes that they pay. And us as a service provider, having just basic services to homeless families, there's not an ability to be able to collect a rainy day fund out of the rent that's generated from the families that stay there. And so we do not have a large reserve for capital improvement projects.
I understand that the Verdugo Housing Corporation doesn't have that sort of margin, but does Door of Hope do that sort of savings, since you have a stake in the facility, obviously, even though you don't own it?
Yeah, we survive on individual donations, grants, and other funding that is able to fund the operations. We don't have a capital reserve fund at Door of Hope.
And then another question is, so what would happen to this project if you only received partial funding from CDBG?
It'd be a very difficult decision on figuring out what to be able to do as far as flooring. We would prioritize the most urgent and most important areas, which would probably be the rooms. The rooms are the most important. The corridors, they're the most worn, but not as urgent as a sanitary reasons. So probably the rooms would be the priority.
So you'd do part of it, part of the project?
If we had to.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
Well,
I'll go last.
You didn't have another question? I thought he was going to go. Okay, I just have just a couple of questions, and it looks like you completed the solar program.
We've signed the contract, and we're preparing to go out to bid. We actually have, excuse me, a number of different projects going on right now. We're anticipating a need to tent the whole building, and so we want to make sure we tent it for termites and roaches before we do the roof and solar.
The reason I ask, it says, most recently, Glendale completed a solar and energy efficiency project in 2015 with successful replacement of the roof and installation of solar panels at the site.
Committee Ramirez, I believe that was in response to a question on the application as far as experience. That's their Pasadena site.
Pasadena.
So they did finish their project, very similar to the Glendale project. And let me back up where we are currently with Door Hope. We currently are working on the bathroom renovations project, which is, again, a project we funded a year ago. They had experienced a little bit of delays because of, as you open up the showers and areas, and there was some termite damage, there was some rot, there was some wood that needed to be replaced. So we did have a little bit of delays as well as the exterior ramp. That's almost done, I believe, about 90% done. That should be hopefully finishing up in March. And that time we were holding back on the solar panel because we wanted to make sure we're done with one project. Solar panel project will go up next. And the reason we're going to tent, or Door Hope is going to tent, because of the termites, all that damage, probably spread a little bit of that out, and be a good idea to, at their cost, to tent it and spray it and do all the termite, removal at that time. So I think that project will go along pretty soon in March as well, the solar panel project.
And would they need an extension?
We hope not. We hope we can get started before the end of June. That's our anticipated time.
Okay. I know that tenting is expensive. I think I paid over $3,000 recently for a house.
Yeah.
So, then on the flooring, I also did some laminate replacing, and the padding is critical for the top floor. The noise, evidently, the noise for the bottom is, unless you've got your residence, second-story residence over here and first story over here. But if you have one on top of the other, the noise level from the top floor with laminate and hardwood floors evidently is extensive. And I noticed in your estimates, I guess, that in one of them was the padding is considerably higher, and for good reason. And I think it's because of the noise transmission. So I'm just thinking that I used that foam pad on the bottom floor, but on the top floor, we had to go to the more expensive one. What that would do to your project, but it surely is something to consider, but maybe it's something you just can't because of the costs involved. But I thought I might want to point that out. And 100% of the project, that's kind of what it takes. Actually, it seems to me, based on what you're doing, you've gotten is that a bid?
Yeah, we did multiple bids.
Yeah, that's a pretty good bid. Okay, that's it for me.
Mr. Avedisian? Bing? You're done?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
Chair,
Carrillo.
just to answer Committee Member Ramirez's question, there is in that $87,000 bid the cost for which is a revised quote, for the padding, the underlayment. So it seems like they took into consideration your
I think it's important for the top story.
And my second question is related to Door Hope. In your proposal, you've added $9,264 for supervision, and from your response, my understanding is that's for Door Hope staff, not necessarily the contractors overhead, or that's for your staff to oversee the time for
Yes, that is
staff
correct.
members?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a reminder to committee members to be filling out the evaluation forms as we're going along as well. We'll collect those at the end. Okay, next up, Homeland and Glendale RET chapter, conversion to solar electric energy system.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, staff, good morning. My name is Armand Gorgorian from Homeland Glendale RET chapter. Homeland Glendale RET chapter's main campus, which is located at 3347 North San Fernando Road, was purchased in 1997. This center provides athletic and cultural services to a large number of Glendale youth. With partial funding from HUD, this former beer warehouse was converted into a recreational and community center in the local youth, serving the local youth. The vast majority of them are from low to moderate income families. The center is adjacent to South Glendale, has 2 gymnasiums utilized for basketball and volleyball, 2 additional gyms for for artistic gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, martial arts, table tennis, and dance classes. The center is being utilized for more than 8 hours a day on weekdays and 12 hours per week. We are proposing, last year actually, we came with a proposal to have a solar system installed to our building. You were gracious enough and approved 50% of it. So we are right now at the stage that we had the job walk, and by 3rd of this month, which will be Thursday, we will open the bid packages, the bid proposals. Hopefully they will be in line with our budget, and we will decide on the lowest or the best proposal that we will receive and start the program. Usually, once that happens, we will have approximately 1 month to get all the permits, another month to 45 days to do the project. So now I'm here to apply for the rest of it, because when we gave the proposal last year, we gave a proposals for the whole project. Now, because we were hoping that we will be able to get the second phase next year, we have this oversized sub-panel so that it can be utilized for last year's panels and this year's panels. 128 panels were going to be installed for phase 1, and we're proposing the same amount of panels for phase 2. By doing this, we will save 50% on our utility bill. And that 50% will enable us to have more programs and projects for our youth that are being served at the organization. It'll give us a better opportunity to help them out. One of the projects that we think that we will expand is our youth counseling program. We have now 1 counselor in-house that, when necessary, helps the youth. But 1 is not enough, considering that we have 2,600 members, which about 2,200 of them are youth, and sometimes they start to get bad habits and they need help. I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Question, so are you saying that you have not started the solar project that we funded 50%
Well,
last year?
as soon as we got the contract, we prepared the bid package. The bid package is this thick, actually, to tell you the truth. I don't know how these people read this. But we prepared the bid package and put it in the newspaper, and taking care of all these steps, we are at the stage that on Thursday of this week, we will open the bids.
Okay, because I was under the impression last year when we had this discussion that if we funded you at 50%, that you thought you would get, that's why you say phase 1, phase 2. What I'm hearing today, though, is that there's only 1 phase, which is you're going to do all of it.
You have already approved phase 1 last year, so I'm here today applying for phase 2.
Well, when you say phase 1 and phase 2 of a project, you would assume that phase 1 would be built by now. But what I'm hearing is that you've set the first batch of funding aside. In other words, nothing's actually been done yet. You're going to do the project all at once?
Mr. Chairman, it is not our fault that that happens. It depends how fast we can get the contract, how fast we can go to the newspaper and all that stuff. We are trying our best we are in much more hurry than you are. We want to take care of this project because we will save some money and we will use that saved money for some other
Okay,
purpose.
but all I'm trying to clarify is nothing's been built yet.
Nothing has been built
Okay,
yet.
so now what you're proposing is that you would do it all at once, assuming some level of funding this year as well.
I don't think so, because if it takes the same amount of time to take all these steps, and already on Thursday I'm going to open the bid package, I will start the first phase immediately.
Okay. Other questions?
There is a rebate dollars here, 43,000. Has that been calculated into your funding request?
Yes. Yeah, that $43,000 will be something that we will get a rebate from City of Los Angeles. So the amount that we have applied for $43,000 is on the side. It's not included.
So you took out the 43
Yeah.
from the actual?
Yeah, because the actual cost estimate that we received was $165,000.
Okay.
And if I read it correctly, based on the analysis that Precise Air System provided you, maybe you can answer this question in case I get it wrong. But so there's a certain amount of savings per year, right, based on having installed solar, and what you're proposing is that savings would go back into your operational budget for your facility or
Projects for the children, for projects for the children.
Because I saw $647,000 over 25 years.
Yes,
Okay,
about $2,900 per month.
per month
Yes.
savings. Okay,
And that will be 50% of what we are paying right now.
right. And then your payback period was pretty good because of the LADWP,
7 to 8 years or 6,
Yep.
so yeah.
which is pretty good for a solar project. Usually they're longer, depending on what sort of rebate exists. Other questions?
Just, based on your experience, have you seen similar projects with organizations at your size, athletic centers? Are they happy with the maintenance, and is it just a success story looking back at some of the organizations with solar
I have not
projects?
spoken to any specific organization regarding that issue, but reading from other papers and everything else, everybody is happy with the solar. Actually, there's a lot of companies, not companies, but organizations that are promoting for everybody to go and get solar.
Especially athletic centers with
Yeah.
such large population and demand.
Let me follow up on the chairman's question that on the bid. How come you didn't open a bid package last year after you got approval for the first?
Commissioner Ramirez, when you approve here, it takes a while. I'm sure Mr. Carrillo can explain a little bit better. It takes a while until I get a contract from City of Glendale. If I don't get it, I cannot take any steps. I have to have that contract first, then take my steps. When I get the contract, then I go to a person that prepares scope of work and bid package, and we spend a lot of money paying him to do that, to prepare the bid package. Once it's done, I have to take it back to the City of Glendale again for them to approve that bid package, which, as I mentioned to you, is this thick. When I get that back from them, then is the time for me to go and publish it in the newspaper to find potential bidders for this project. So all of this takes time. It is not a small project, it's a large project, and it takes a lot of time.
Oh, I was just kind of comparing to what Door of Hope did, and they're ready to get started now, and you're just going to be opening the bids. But you do indicate that you. It seems to me like that your response is that you were waiting for the city to give you the contract, and you hadn't received it.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Carrillo can explain.
Yes, Committee Member Ramirez. Let me explain. There was two projects we were working with Home and Edmond this past year. The first was a solar panel, of course. They we did have a little bit delay, and that's staffing because we were working on the first phase of the bathroom renovation, and you'll hear about that next, but that took a little longer than anticipated. And we really want to prioritize that project because as I think the committee has expressed, that had gone on a little bit too long, and we certainly aren't almost completing that project. The solar panel, we will get off, bids are open Thursday, we will get going on that this month. It will be done by the end of the year, which is June. So there's no issue there as far as timeline goes. It was just waiting until after the, well, and also I was going to mention this too. We were anticipating these roofing type projects, Door Hope and Home Amendment, to have an impact with El Nino. And so we actually consciously postponed the bidding process till January, February, and then we can start in March because of the rains, anticipated rains from December to March, and that really never occurred. But we didn't want to put ourselves in a position of having to stop because of the rains. But they are on track. There's no question that the project will be done by the end of the year. In fact, it should be done by April. Door Hope has not started. They're actually a bit behind in that process, and as they finish
Their bidding started.
No, the bidding has not started.
I think I just asked him.
No, the bidding has not started. The contract has been submitted. There's still some
That was on the flooring, not the
reviews.
solar.
That's different project.
No, I asked him, because it said, like, I thought,
He said Thursday, I think.
yeah,
He's
I
opening.
thought he had said that there was completed, so.
Door Hope has not completed that. They
No,
haven't started
no.
yet. They're so part of it's been these delays, and we certainly know that we're moving quickly now for the next few months to finish these. It's perfect weather to get started, so we're going to hopefully finish it within a month. These
So
are
the
not
delay
very
was
hard.
the city.
It was delayed. It was an effort by us to prioritize our current projects, which is the bathroom project, same as Door Hope. It's prioritized projects that need immediate assistance, and then proceed with the next project and finish those in 1 year. And we're confident that both projects will be done by the end of the year in June.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I do not blame the city for that, Mr. Ramirez. I appreciate the amount of assistance that department is giving us, and I'm sure for every other organization that are working with them. The notes that Mr. Carrillo said, I just want to emphasize on two things. First off, we still have time until end of June, so we're not at fault. We can do that. And second, El Nino was a main factor, which we were almost sure that it's going to be here, and we were hoping that it'll come and go, and then we will start the project on the roof, which we didn't get the El Nino, so
Not yet.
blame the God.
So we don't need to blame anyone, we just need
Well,
to.
you can always blame me.
Find out what the facts are.
Okay, any other questions?
So basically, what I understand, both projects, the restroom project, well, this project, the solar panel project, will be hopefully done by June, by end of the fiscal year.
Yes, Mr. Deason, yes, we expect them to be both done by June 30th.
And if it's not, you will submit an amendment?
Submit the expansion, but I hope that it won't get to that.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask the same question I asked before, because I think this is kind of a theme I wanted to strike, which I think is important, which is, do you do any sort of study of your facilities? Because I know you have multiple proposals here that we're about to hear another one. Do you have any sort of study of what are the things that are aging in your facility that, could require attention a certain number of years out so that you can reserve budget and save for?
Mr. Chairman, our facility is about 35,000 square feet, which about 20,000 of it is on the first floor and the rest upstairs. 2 gymnasiums that were built after we purchased the property. One was built in 1998 and the other one in 2001. They're brand new. The other portion, which is our offices, again, the ground floor of that area, which we have our gymnasium hall and the martial arts hall, they're partially new. The only portion that is getting old is the offices in the second floor, which my next proposal is, which is the bathrooms are in the second floor, and The other thing that we have to spend money on it, and it's not a big deal, it's hopefully we will be able to do that or find a small grant, is the flooring. Because the carpet that we have there, we inherited that when we purchased the building. So it's really old. We have to take care of that. But the roof, we have worked on it. So we don't anticipate a lot of work on that building.
And just to close out on the solar part of this, so if you were to only receive part of the funding that you're requesting for the solar project, what happens to the project? So you got whatever you got last...
Partial funding of phase
You got
two?
whatever you got last year, which was
Yes.
partial funding. Remember, we
So
talked about 50%.
If the committee approves the $120,000, which will be additional expenses that we have to pay out of our pocket, we will finish the project, phase 1 and phase 2, and we will be saving 50% of our...
Right, and what I'm asking is, what if you don't get 120,000?
It'll be very difficult,
So the project would be in jeopardy?
very much so.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to continuing with Home and Men, bathroom renovation, phase 2.
So, you know, we had a lot of problem with phase 1, the bid packages that came in, they were not up with par with the funding that we had. So we discussed the issue with City of Glendale Community Development Department, and we decided that you had approved that $24,000 for phase 2. We added that to phase 1, and we were able to start and hopefully finish within a couple of weeks the phase 1 of the project, including the funding from phase 1 and phase 2. Now, that project is halfway done. We've installed all the equipment, all the fixtures. We're waiting for the partitions that we have ordered to come in so that we can finalize the project. So for phase 2, we are proposing to renovate the bathrooms in the second floor, which are really bad shape, even worse than what it was in the first floor. So it includes demolition, partitions, wainscot, flooring, fixtures, plumbing, electrical. And that way we will have a ladies' bathroom with 2 units and men's bathroom with 2 units over there, updated and clean and healthy. Don't forget that in second floor we have a lot of kids that have activity in the second floors. Our scouting weekly activities partially is in the second floor. Our art and culture programs are all in the second floor. Our youth groups that are coming for weekly meetings, they are on the second floor. So they're using those 2 bathrooms, which we believe that it's important as it was the first floor bathrooms.
So this is a different set of bathrooms, right?
Yeah,
Than what we've
and
funded before.
I need to, I believe I'm right, you have already approved this once and funded it, but we took that funding, added to the phase 1 funding, and decided we will be able to continue that project.
So if I may ask, so the first funding, which was about 24, almost 25,000, that completed the first floor bathrooms.
First floor bathrooms, yes,
And the additional funding you're requesting, 36, will complete
for the second
the
floor.
second. How many bathrooms on the second floor?
Men's room and ladies' room, each one of them 2 bathrooms, 2 units.
So, yeah, we've funded this twice, two years in a row. Combination of those funds finished the
First
one
floor.
set of bathrooms.
Yeah.
This is for a second set of bathrooms, correct? Other questions?
Well, I just was curious how you could combine the funding for 14 and the funding for 15 and call it first phase. How did you make it be first phase? Because we funded first phase because it was a slum, remember?
Yes.
Sanitary, awful, and I kind of had concerns about that. And so I agreed with full funding for that, so you could take care of it. And then we came in with second phase last year, and we fully funded it. and looks like the city's been working with you to get it done. But now that became first phase.
Yes.
And now you're back with second phase. And I thought the second phase that we funded last year was for upstairs.
Maybe Mr. Correa, you can provide some explanation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Committee Member Ramirez, yes, it was originally for the second phase, but I believe we did come to the committee for approval to move the funds from the second phase to the first phase because of the cost overruns from the budget. Essentially, the bids went way over our anticipated budget. So in order to complete that project and get it all done, we requested the Phase 2 funds get moved to the Phase 1 and finish that project 100%. And that's what was done. It was a combination of $35,000 with $24,948 to complete the Phase 1 project. So that was the first floor restrooms. The next phase that's being requested is the second phase, which was approved by the committee last year, but again, we did have to make adjustments for the cost overruns.
What happens if there's cost overruns on the new second phase?
Mr. Ramirez, even with combining the first and second phase fundings, Homenetman has to pay some of the expenses out of its pocket. So I believe if Phase 2 goes overrun, Homenetman will pay the rest of it.
Well, I can't imagine why you don't take care of this kind of stuff.
That's what we're trying to do.
I mean, it should have been done. The city is, you're not looking at this kind of stuff?
Yes, Committee Ramirez, we're aware of the improvements needed. There are health and safety items, and those pictures are probably, is that the newer upstairs?
Yeah, it's been taken care
Yes.
of already.
Is that why
You have kids working up, the scouts are upstairs.
Yes.
And you have this, and this is why I was animate in approving that we give you full funding for this kind of stuff. This could not happen in Glendale. So, it's troubling to me. The next thing that I think that maybe you can explain, you have this certificate of occupancy. I'm not sure why you included it.
I was asked to.
You were asked? Well, this one says it's a zone change. And it was approved in 6/29/15. It's the office of Eric Garcetti. And there's a lot of information here that's kind of, I'm not sure what it is, but it's a change of use, which is, according to what's here, is a zone change. And it's warehouse to banquet hall, well, banquet room. We call them banquet halls here. And it's a change, warehouse to banquet room with lobby area, capacity 588. And I don't know if that's people or what. And then it is the second, it's a two-story building, and it's the second floor. And then you have the permit details, and you said in your proposal here that you have all the permits from the city for the plumbing, and I guess you do because the city's been working with you on it. But the permit description is change of use from warehouse to banquet room with lobby area. And then the change of use is from S1 to A2. In Glendale, when you go to banquet hall, banquet room, I guess, it becomes commercial. And it is a zoning change. And then it says also add second floor bathrooms and storage with lobby area. And those, it's approved for vacancy. So according to this tells me that the 2 bathrooms have been added.
May I explain it?
That's a completely separate
If you
building,
could-
I think she's
if you
talking
May I
about.
explain it?
Yes,
That is from 2001, I believe, when we built our second gymnasium. When we built the second gymnasium, which, excuse me, we foresaw that during the year we may have 5 to 6, 7 banquets of our own fundraising events and all that stuff there. So because we were going to use 5 or 6 times for our own fundraisings, we had to get a permit for that. So they gave us a permit because of that. When you build the bathroom, when you build the banquet, already you named it a banquet hall or banquet room or banquet facility, you have to have, per their requirements, enough bathrooms for that. So the second floor bathrooms that you're talking about has nothing to do with the bathrooms that we are talking about. It's completely different, in a different location of the building. So has nothing to do with that. The reason is in 2015, because we weren't able to find the original use and occupancy paper that we received in 2001, so we went and got a new one.
That's why it says
It's very
2015 on it.
confusing. Yeah. To me, it's very confusing, so. And actually raises flags for me, but.
But again, did I make myself clear that the bathrooms that you read in that piece of paper has nothing to do with the bathrooms that we're applying funding for?
Right, that's the
yeah.
ones that you combine the funding for.
No, this bathrooms has nothing to do with any of these things.
Okay.
Nothing.
So you already have 2 good bathrooms upstairs then?
No. The bathrooms that we're talking about is in the office area where the kids have their activities there. Those bathrooms that you're talking about is at the other side of the building where our gymnasium, which we could use it 5 or 6 times for banquets, for fundraising events, for our own events, is in that area. The access to those bathrooms are from the foyer and the green gym, that we call it green gym, from that area, not from this side of the building. They have no access to that.
Different part of the facility.
Well, in the city of Glendale, anytime you renovate or even, well, any building that's public use, you have to do the ADA compliance.
And that is what we're going to do.
They didn't have you do that when you did the renovation of the building?
That bathrooms that you're talking about, they're all ADA. They have nothing to do with this portion of the building where we are asking funding for bathrooms. Those bathrooms that we are going to renovate are going to be ADA, all of them, as the ones downstairs that we're working on them right now. The ones that you are referring to, which has nothing to do with our activities, completely different parts of the building, and I would be more than happy to show it to all the committee members once you find time to come there, is completely different. It's all ADA because it was built in 2001.
And that was part of your gymnasium build?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are 2 different wings, kind of different
yeah.
entrances, different. So I had a tour, so I kind of know.
Yeah.
So I think to answer the question, it was done as part of the renovation, required as part of the renovation, meaning conversion of the warehouse into the gym.
But you had you do have a zone change from warehouse to banquet room, and you have a zone change that applies differently upstairs than downstairs?
Is that a scope of our
No.
discussion here? Do we want to really get into
If I
zoning?
can ask the question?
No, but is this something that we need to discuss
what's
at
in
the
front of me.
CDBG, or?
It's privy of the chair, but it's something that was submitted with the application, so it's, could be questions on that.
Well, I won't ask any more questions.
Let me clarify, just so we know the restrooms. There are, how many restrooms in the building? There are 6?
6.
6.
Ladies' room and men's room. Each one of them have 2 or 3 bathrooms.
So we're only looking at focusing on 4 restrooms. The 2 restrooms that are pertaining to this original certificate of use of occupancy were done already. The 4 are the ones that we're converting. Now, it's all been voluntary as well as for
And
ADA accessibility.
those were done not as part of Home and Admin's work, not as part of CDBG.
Correct. Right.
When they renovated the gym, turned the warehouse into the gym, they had to do that work as part
It
of
was
that.
all done by Home Management, had nothing
Correct.
to do with CDBG
Had
funding.
nothing to do with CDBG, that's my point.
Correct. And the new
But-
ones are ADA accessible.
Let me clarify this, because then you will read my notes and you will say, no, you said something differently. We have 2 gymnasiums there. One was built in 1998, one was built in 2001. The one that was built in 1998, we utilized CDBG funding. It was all basketball and volleyball, nothing more. The one that we used was built in 2001, there was not 1 penny of CDBG money.
Okay, other questions? No. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next and final proposal is from Essentia Solar Project.
Good morning. I'm Natalie Camoro, Executive Director of Essentia. I had hoped our Director of Operations, Vikan Sosikian, could be here with me today, but we're dealing with showers at Winter Shelter, Moises, so he couldn't. The proposal that we have to you today is for our building at 1851 Tyburn Street. As you know, Essentia is a homeless service organization operating out of this 11,500 square foot building where we have our access center and a 40-bed emergency housing program, a commercial kitchen, and administrative offices. We had, when we submitted this application, it was just a few days before the close of our capital campaign, which we successfully concluded on December 31st. And this is an element of one of the last remaining items to improve the building that we've been in since October of 2013. We had long wanted to have solar installation at the facility. We did not proceed until we had raised the funding and submitted this application because the bid that we subsequently had received came in higher than our initial budget had estimated. So we are seeking $100,000. It is going to be matched by the County of Los Angeles and some additional private funding to fulfill it. I recently received an email from the county confirming that once we have approval of the CDBG funding, we would be able to move forward. So the impact of this project would mean saving approximately $15,000 a year in utility costs to Essentia. And of course, as you know, in any budget climate for a nonprofit organization, wherever we can save costs would be hugely beneficial. The building is in our ownership, and this is our first application for CDBG capital improvement funding, although I do believe that the city on our behalf has also secured CDBG funding to support, and you would probably be able to speak to that, the other capital improvements to the facility. So I think I'll leave it with that, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The match that you're talking about, can you clarify what you mean by that?
So the budget for this is about $220,000. We had originally budgeted in our capital campaign $145,000. So when we saw that this updated bid was much higher, we went to the County of Los Angeles with a proposal, and they basically would wrap around. If we get $100,000 from the CDBG, the balance of the costs would be covered by the county.
And what if you did not get the full 100,000 from us?
Right. So if we don't get the full amount, we would need to go back and take a look at where we are with our capital fundraising. I should say that we did meet and exceeded actually our goal of $7.45 million. So there is additional funding that looks like will be coming in, but it's currently in the form of pledges. So once we can sort out the timing and so forth, then we would move forward with seeing where that gets put to compensate, if you will, for any cut to this grant.
And currently, unlike LA DWP, GWP's solar rebate program is limited with a long wait list. So I don't even know where that sort of rebate comes into play here.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Glendale does have a rebate program. However, we know it's been impacted and there's waiting list, and it's not as quick as Los Angeles, and we didn't anticipate having any rebates for this project this time.
Right, we assumed. We did not assume it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And, you know, obviously, a solar program is to save utility costs. Where do those savings go? Like, where do you reapply those? Where do you anticipate reapplying those savings?
Well, services and operations, we are predominantly a service organization, so we're talking about personnel costs and consultants. For example, we have a trauma therapist and psychiatrist. We've had to cut back on those hours because we've had cuts to our funding. So it would accrue back to what we're able to do as a service agency. Yes.
Right. Other questions?
Just a general question. So historically, do we know what would be the maintenance cost? I mean, I know the solar systems, the solar panel would require, and if we were to, kind of approve fundings to install solar panels on a few organizations, and, we need to kind of also look ahead and see, are they coming forward in a year and asking for, 50,000 in repair? So what is the general kind of knowledge on panel repairs and things like that? Because it can be pricey. I mean, we could be looking at some, repairs in the future as we, kind of approve this fundings.
That's a very good question, Commissioner Markarian. We haven't had too much experience with the solar panels here, as this is a very recent trend now with homeowners and commercial buildings. We do know they come with warranties, and I don't know this is the 15-year warranty, or
yeah, I was just going to look
think we need to look at that warranty, but there's a long warranty, and it covers the roof as well. Some warranties cover wind damage, for example, and we don't have that here, but they do cover some of those damages. But wear and tear would be 15, 20 years from now. They do last a long time. I've seen the warranties, I believe, about 15 years on the panels themselves. Now, labor, because something got loose, would be certainly something got, there's a leak somewhere, it will be the responsibility of the owner, but generally the panels and everything in part of the panels are covered by a very extensive warranty by the companies.
And I'll just add that we've concluded our capital campaign. We're looking now at our asset management plan for the organization. We own this building, we own an apartment building, so that factors into our financial planning for the agency.
And is this a you'll own the system, or are you leasing it?
We want to own it. Yeah, that would be in our view, it would be optimal if we were the owners.
Other questions?
I just know there's some unhappy, homeowners with Glendale's project of solar panels, and they're still utilizing regular regular electrical and others. But I really don't know much about the solars and.
Well, anecdotally, I personally installed solar at my home, and it's been about 5 months. Totally happy. My utility bill's down.
Good.
They haven't billed me.
Oh, wow,
I haven't paid for it. We've been chasing them down, trying to pay them. So. That's an unusual experience. I expect that we will have to pay this, and I expect it'll be billed in a timely manner. But I can tell you that I personally had a positive experience with solar. And these are SunPower panels, which are domestically produced, and we've researched that as well. That this is a company that we are looking at, has done a lot of business in Glendale, and they're very familiar with the city processes.
Okay, very good.
Commissioner Markarian, just to answer your question, on these panels, there is a 25-year limited power warranty and a 10-year limited product warranty, so maybe the details, we need to look at that, but there are very extensive link fee warranties on the panels.
But I think also things happen. So you have to, as an organization, we look at this and say, well, we need to be budgeting for staff time to deal with windstorms or other issues, or dealing with insurance or so forth. So it's not something that we take lightly.
Well, and I guess I'll strike the same theme I have been with others, is that when you're looking at these facilities, it would be prudent to have a kind of a capital reserve study and a capital reserve fund. So you're always setting aside a certain money, which I'm hoping all organizations are looking at it that way, not kind of, hand to mouth type of dealing with problems as they come, because you can always anticipate the more you anticipate in advance, then the more prepared you can be for any of these facilities. So this just adds one more line item on your capital
And
list,
operations,
right,
yeah.
in terms of something you have to maintain and, you know, predict life cycles and things like that.
Well, and I can tell you from my own experience in understanding how housing ownership, nonprofit housing ownership works, a very old study had about only a third of nonprofit organizations properly managing their assets and having a sufficient reserve fund. I can also assure you that the Board of Directors of Ascensia is very keen on financial planning and responsibilities for our assets.
And this recommendation is from your board, actually, for the solar panels?
Oh, all of this was part of a board-approved budget and plan for the capital improvements to the facility, yes.
Well, I especially like the fact that you only need 46%.
We hoped that would be appealing to the committee.
And you are a non-membership operation, right? It's just strictly service?
Right.
Great, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Very
Any
good.
other
Thank
questions?
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. What?
I think we're done with the presentations.
Mr. Chair, we do have public comment, but there is no cards and no one here. Our next step was our break at this time.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee special meeting on Monday, February 29th, 2016. We will continue with our review of the capital projects. And this morning we heard from each of the agencies that have applied for funds. And so now we are at the point where we will review the potential allocations. If I could ask as a couple of points. First of all, we will have some general discussions, but then also go in order. And when it comes to discussing Glendale Adventist's proposal, committee member Markarian will step out of the room for that part of the discussion, as well as will not participate in the voting for that in order to avoid any conflict of interest. And if I could ask staff to clarify, give us the big picture, how much funding is available, just kind of summarize where we are with that, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one item that we just need to read for the record, and I'm going to ask our staff to read one item that we missed, just for the record.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. Yep.
Item 4B at 1, receive report on abbreviated funding applications for fiscal year 2015-16 CDBG Public Social Service Reprogrammed Funds, and deliberate and approve funding recommendations.
That was an item that we didn't read. We discussed it, but we just needed to read it for the record. You have in front of you the CDBG funding overview of the capital projects. Now, we do have 2 pre-approved city projects. These were reviewed by and approved by the committee back in October 2015. They have not changed. The funding is remaining for code enforcement at $370,000, and our Section 108 loan repayment for Ascensia Shelter at $223,000. That's the Section 108 loan repayment for a total of $593,000. In the capital side, we were fortunate enough to have some funding available from our new allocation, which increased our estimated funding from $412,000 to $476,605. That still has a difference of $207,815 for our capital projects for CDBG for next year.
And if I could just ask, just so refresh everyone's memory and provide a little bit more detail, I'm speaking to the pre-designated projects. So there are 3 items in there. One is the code enforcement, one is the Section 108 loan repayment, Essentia. If you could just kind of summarize that for the record. And then in the past, there were $100,000 in community services and parks pre-designated funds, but there have been 0 last year and 0 this year. And I kind of just summarize that overall pre-designated part of this before we get into the allocations.
Sure, Mr. Chair. The designated projects, or we call pre-approved city projects, did have a parks improvement project each year of $100,000 or so, and our department, the city's Community Services and Parks Department, did not request those funds. We had funding from another source at this time, from development impact fees that we were going to utilize for some of our parks, including those that were previously CDBG eligible in South Glendale. We were fortunate enough to have that fund to be used as a source to improve funds for improve parks for next year. So those funds have been pulled out. We did keep our loan at $223,000 for Section 108 because that is a permanent loan that we have for HUD, and that's for the Essentia shelter. We did receive $2 million on that loan, and we're paying that back over 2 years for the new Essentia shelter and an access center. And code enforcement remains at a steady $370,000 for the South Glendale code enforcement program.
And the loan repayment, I mean, that is obviously an obligation that the city has taken on, correct? And so we're pre-designating funds, but the obligation has been taken on by the city in behalf of Essentia, so that's where the partnership is.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Is this a city council meeting?
No.
No, it is not, sir.
What is this? What's the proceedings going on here? A what? What commission? Well, where's everybody? How come the seats aren't filled?
They left.
Yeah, I'm getting a, what do they call it in school? A lesson in, what do they call it?
Government.
Government. Where is everybody?
They went home.
How come people don't participate in government? You know why? Because everybody's struggling to put food on the table. What a lesson in city.
Well, communications.
What a lesson. Walk into a council chambers of a major city in the United States of America or the state of California and see an empty room with no citizens participating at all.
Mr. Chair, you don't have to recognize these comments.
Ignorance just means a lack of knowledge. And you're a Latino? What are you? There's no minorities here. There's no African Americans here.
We have to proceed with our meeting. Public comment is over. Thank you, sir.
By the way, I'm Dr. Navas, DDS.
Thank you.
A biologist, a molecular biologist, a philosopher, a painter, a sculptor, a poet, and all kinds of other crap.
Thank you,
I'm on a
sir.
mission to change all kinds of crap.
Thank you, sir. Okay. After that brief interruption, we will continue. Where were we?
Oral communications.
No, we weren't. Self-imposed oral communications.
We're summarizing the pre-designated projects. We're talking
right.
about the Section 108 loan.
Right. And so that's the obligation that the city has taken on for the shelter that Essentia runs in partnership with Essentia.
And that is the new building.
Put your mic.
And I was going to ask, where does the city get the funding to for Essentia?
Committeeman Ramirez, that is our funding that we have. Our allocation, part of our allocation is to pay back the loan. So from our grant, we pay back the loan for funds.
Or CDBG?
Yeah,
Is the grant, CDBG grant?
Yeah, we took out a $2 million loan from HUD. It's called the Section 108 loan. In order to pass it on to Essentia to make it feasible for them to redevelop their project. And then the city is committed to repaying that loan through the CDBG program by deducting a certain amount every year.
Is this
it's a
10-year?
Yeah, it's a 10-year.
And what year are we in?
We are in our 4.5 years.
So we still have 6 more payments to make after this.
Okay, thank you for that summary. I think that helps explain a little bit in terms of those amounts. And the amount between the loan and the code enforcement and pre-designated is $593,000, just to summarize. Okay, let's now shift into the proposals that we heard from this morning. And maybe what I might suggest is let's go down the proposals. Let's keep the Glendale Adventist to the very end, so that provides an opportunity for Committee Member Markarian to leave the room. So in that sense, let's start with some general comments about each of the proposals, and then I think we'll get into some specifics to start putting some numbers into the spreadsheet to see how it works. So let's start with Catholic Charities.
If I may start, I see that Catholic Charities has really not have applied for funding, for capital improvement funding. And this is an important project. I feel like they need to make all these improvements. Some of them are just very timing to do it. So I feel strongly about funding them. Now, I think what they expressed was that the minimal funding for just the repair of the pipes was close to $30,000. So I would really like to see that amount as a minimum. Then I want to kind of go back and look at some more funding if possible. But just the fact that they haven't really applied for capital improvement funding over 10 years, they try to really keep everything in order. But obviously there is a great need in so many areas. And I thought that the proposal was very fair as far as asking. So I'd like to maybe to start with, just do the bare minimal, which would be the 30, and then work our way, if possible, to increase that.
I share your thoughts on that, and I did some calculations off their budgets, and it seems like if you went in, and this is just ballpark, but if you went into, at minimum, give them half of their requests, that would get you not only the sewer, but also the other plumbing work in terms of the bathrooms, like the fixtures and that sort of stuff. And remember, the other elements of the proposal were the painting and patching and the lights, I believe, are the other components, which, if you remember from my questioning, the lights seem to be functioning. That's just a matter of energy efficiency. And the painting is more aesthetic. So let's, any other comments?
Well, I would fund them fully because they have kind of not asked for anything and we've given them nothing. So it's critical. I volunteered in that building and it could use help. Lots of help.
I'm okay with putting 50% down for now, and my priority would be them to come back.
To come back to full funding.
And kind of full fund if possible, yeah. But definitely.
Mr. Avedisian?
I would think actually before even you start, I had put a number for my mind, and that was pretty much the 50% to start with, and see where we come with the final numbers. Then we can always adjust it accordingly.
Okay, so why don't we do that just to start the spreadsheet going as well, and then we'll obviously come back and look at the rest. So let's just go at 50% for now. Okay, and then we'll skip Glendale Adventist, as I mentioned, which was the next one we heard for later. Door of Hope Flooring Improvement Project.
I would like to see that one funded fully, too.
I think it's a very important project. I mean, 16 units, new flooring, it just seems that it's in not a good condition. So I see that as a priority. And they're asking for 100% funding from CDBG. And if we were to do less than that, I'm not sure if they were going to just do half of the project and come back for the remainders next year. I don't remember anyone I was asking.
Yeah, I asked,
Okay.
and so the answer that was given is that it would probably limit the change of floorings to the rooms instead of the hallways, that sort of cut back, that sort of
Okay.
way. I mean, my general comment is, this is kind of where I come back to an issue which we'll discuss a little bit in greater detail when we get to some of the solar projects, but this is the kind of project which, in my opinion, is more quality of life related than solar. Solar is a kind of a method to offset costs, which we haven't in the past required that the offset be actually allocated or earmarked in a specific way back to other capital projects or needs. And so, last year we provided Door of Hope with the solar request that they had, which is, still in the process of being done. I remember asking, because there's a water heater that they paid for $15,000 out of their own funds. And so I kind of differentiated in my head between these sorts of things like flooring and other things that have an immediate impact on quality of life in these facilities versus solar that's on the roof and no one really knows that it's there and it's merely meant to offset some operation costs. I guess I'm saying that I only wish that Door of Hope had applied for the flooring last year instead of the solar, because to me, obviously, if the floor's in bad shape this year, it wasn't in that much of a great shape last year either. So
It's about priorities.
just a general comment about capital project prioritization, which I think I'll come back to later on.
But it is over here, the eligible improvements is installation of special features designed to promote energy efficiency.
It is, but I guess, again, come back to it's the energy efficiency in which you're going to save on costs ought to go somewhere specifically is kind of my point. So offset costs on utilities ought to go somewhere where there's
But isn't that a position that Sempra Energy has, kind of in opposition to solar?
Sempra? Sempra is a gas company.
The gas company,
Yeah.
Aren't you employed by the gas company?
I'm in Edison.
Edison.
Yeah.
Oh, Edison has that position also.
No, we're not against solar. No, we actually.
Are you sure?
Yeah. We actually encourage it. And we
Well, then-
provide rebates. But that's not my point here. My point, Committee Member Ramirez, is that when you're going to save on operational costs somewhere through, in this case, solar, those funds ought to go reprogrammed into something else, let's say a flooring or something where there's a kind of a like-for-like improvement of something that's tangible from a quality of life perspective, whereas an inhabitant of a facility won't know whether there's a solar panel on their roof or not.
The reserve project
They
improvement.
will know if the
Yeah.
floor is in good shape or
Funding.
not, right?
Yeah, I understand
That's
what
where
you
I'm
mean.
going with that. So
But we approved two already.
Yeah, that was last year, so.
I predicted this trend, and we have
Well, it's-
two more coming at us
it's supposed to be a
in a couple of
trend.
minutes.
Yeah.
So, Committee Member Avedisian, do you have anything?
I think the flooring is important, but one question I had that I think I probably am confused. If I remember last Friday when Door of Hope was here and in their communications, they said we have 13 units. Now today in this package it says 16 units. So is it the 13 units or it's a 16 unit project?
Remember, Avedisian, there's 13 units plus there's offices. So their administrative office, counseling office, and their child care offices. So 16
Those
units.
offices counting as the 3 units.
16
There's 16
rooms.
altogether,
16
and 13 are live-in residential units.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the project, of course, the flooring is important, and it's cleanliness and the safety of the kids, people going back and forth, it's important. I think in the units, I would see that if they mentioned it that way, that in the units, if they change, if they get, if they don't get full funding, they would be able at least do, or a portion of it, do the units where it's really needed, and the, extra. I think I would suggest at this point, I guess, probably somewhere around, which I had some notes, probably around somewhere around 50% of project to start with. And then we can go from there.
We can probably put a 60,000 there and just kind of come back again. To look at what, to have an idea what numbers, what deficit we're dealing with at the end.
What's that total number we're working with?
476,605. Second line from the bottom.
Quite a bit of money.
Okay, well, we'll come back. Let's just keep moving forward, and then we'll come back to revisiting all these numbers.
Right.
These are just preliminary. Okay, next, Hominett Men solar system. So that proposal was for $120,000. Second half, we funded half of this. We funded this amount.
Last year.
100 and...
Yeah, so last year we did 122, 121, specifically for, there was an anticipation of half the project. So this is the other half of it. So if you were to combine these two, it would complete that project. So does anyone have thoughts on that?
I would like to see them complete the project. I mean, they have the phase 1 started, moving into phase 2, and you can't have a building halfway done. So I like to see them complete. Now we can look at this point, maybe a partial funding and come back again. So some funding be okay to allocate. But again, I'd like to see the entire project completed, the phase 1 and 2. If you don't fund, they're probably, the phase 1, I don't know, starting and completing just half of the building may not just be, practical. So I'll say again, let's put 50% of funding now and just look back and see where we can help more.
Other committee members?
Well, go ahead.
Good.
Well, I think that because it's been delayed, that if they don't get the full funding, they won't be able to do it. But I don't support the project as a rule because I don't think it meets what I think are the community project. I don't see it as a community project. In Los Angeles, I've always had a problem with that, and I know you have approval from somewhere, but I just like to see our money in Glendale, and of course, I've had that discussion with several times, so, and I supported the bathrooms because I thought it's a health issue. They indicated it was. I still have concerns about the way the whole project has moved. I think it's a great program. You cannot beat it. I think it's a membership program, so they have a lot of resources. I think they do great work. They have great volunteers. They have everything going for them. And I just think that they're in Los Angeles, and although they service our kids, I think that they're well-funded enough to serve our children. So I'm not going to support any funding for Hominett Men. I've had that discussion with him.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Avedisian.
As far as I understand, since I'm new and last year's funding was already there, we have already funded $122,000 for half of the project. We can't build a building halfway. Either you build a building completely or you don't build it. So with that said, I'm also looking at the participants for that project and home amendment, who is participating, who is really using that property, who is really all kinds of activities that goes on. It's our kids, it's the Glendale community kids that are using it, regardless of the property, maybe a block away or whatever it is, portion of their projects are in LA per se, but they are the Glendale kids that they're using that project. They're getting the benefits in every way, shape, and form. With that said, I would think that we have to, at this point, we have to fully fund this project to make sure that the building is built completely, not halfway. So I would suggest to earmark it for the full funding at this point.
Yeah, and this goes back to my comments earlier with the previous one, which is, you know, if you're picking between solar and bathrooms, bathrooms have an immediate effect on participants versus solar, no one knows. So I'd like to see the costs offset by the solar put back into capital so that you can get the bathrooms at least out of it, but that we can talk about separately. So I'm fine with, I agree, we funded it, you know, half of it last year. You know, we're kind of, in my opinion, stuck in terms of needing to fund it so the project can be completed. But I'm comfortable for now in this round to just put it at 50% and let's see where we get, and then we'll come back to these discussions. Okay? All right, so next, home and bathrooms. And right now, by the way, just to summarize, just based on these three allocations, we have still 308,000 left. Is that, am I reading that correctly, Mr. Carrillo?
Yes.
Okay. So we still have some room here. So home and bathrooms.
I like to see, I mean, it's a small amount. I want them to get the job done. So I think we need to kind of give that 36,000 funding so they can complete the bathroom project and make sure that it gets done.
Other comments?
I would agree with that. By just seeing that last year, the funding that they had to come back and reallocate the funding. We had already allocated this funding for them last year to complete the phase one or the downstairs bathrooms. Now, we, in a way, from just looking at the pictures and everything, I think yes, we should. It's already allocated. It was allocated last year, so we just put that full amount and make sure that it's done. We just have to, I guess, ask them to make sure the project is done before their project year end.
And just to
But
clarify,
no extensions.
yeah, just to clarify, Mr. Carrillo, for Mr. Avedisian, the amount that we allocated last year, which was about 25,000, was part two of funding for a different set of bathrooms. This 36 is for a completely other set of bathrooms. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair. This is for the second floor bathrooms that were...
So two different. So the amount last year was the second half of funding for a different set of bathrooms that completes that funding.
Right.
That they still have to do the work on, right? And then this would be another set of bathrooms to complete bathroom work. Okay.
So we're okay to put the full
Ramirez,
amount at
we'll
this?
get
Well,
one more
yeah,
set of comments.
I'm not going to support any funding for this. Somewhere I thought in our paperwork it said that this would cover 8 bathrooms, or did I think it said 6? But this would be the 8th. It would be 8.
It was 4, 2 men and 2 women. I think
Yeah,
that's
this
what I
is what
remember.
we're-
This is 4.
Oh, I thought it was 2 upstairs.
2 of 2 sets, I think.
2 rooms with each one two.
Two in it.
I thought it was
what
1
they
man
explained.
and 1,
No, there's more than one in each.
Yeah.
well, anyway.
Yeah, I support funding this too. I mean, for now, again, this is just to put some numbers in. We'll come back to it if you can put in the full amount on this one, and then we'll come back and see what we've got to work with. Okay, then next, Essentia Solar. This was for 100,000.
Well, you're going to finish off the solar panels for Homenetmen, so I think you might as well give them their 100 right now.
Well, right
This
now,
is-
we only have 60 in there for the Home Men. And again, we're just doing
Well,
these
no,
preliminary
I'm
numbers,
just
yeah.
saying, you know,
Yeah.
I'm going, since
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not funding that other one.
Well, this is 50% of what it's going to be costing them
Costing
for the
them, yeah.
solar system.
They're already
It's actually
covering
47. So
50%.
they're saying that they will be
46, yeah.
covering 50%.
And
We didn't fully cover any project so far. Do we want to just do the 100 or?
I want to do the 100.
But I'm just saying, there's some
Well, I'm gonna
really
see-
good projects that they haven't even.
Yeah, we
you
still
know.
we still have others.
We have to
that-
go back, right?
Yeah, we'll go back. Let me just suggest, let's put in half at 50,000, kind of like we've been doing for some of the other
So, yeah.
larger projects. So let's just put in,
Except number 4, you put in full.
yeah, because that was a smaller amount. I'm saying of the larger projects that are like over our 6-figure projects, let's put in just half for now, and then we'll come back just to see where we're at. And then,
Then you have Glendale Adventist, so I'm
yeah,
going to
then we
confuse
have Glendale
myself.
Adventist, so why don't you step out, committee member Makari?
Workout today.
Okay, so this proposal was for 54,000. It's only part of a much larger, sorry, last year we allocated 54,000 of which were the doors that are part of a larger process. This year they put in this is the largest proposal we received, which was at $220,000, which combines with last year's 54. If you were to combine it with last year's 54, that would be a total of $274,000. So, comments, thoughts?
I know we've somewhat allocated the money, or we gave them the money, that's 54,000 for the doors, and the doors alone, I wouldn't do anything with the building. However, I think England Adventist has otherwise funding that possibly can, cover this cost of remodeling and doing that facility, getting it done with their own funds that some of the nonprofits they lack of. So I don't know what number would be the right number or what would be, but I think maybe we could more consider the nonprofits as of the other charity organizations and nonprofits than Adventist getting the full funding or close to that. I know we've given the monies for the doors, but then again, that's quite a large project. It's going to cost, at least to the CDBG at this point, if we fund them completely, it's going to $270 plus. That nonprofits that needs more money that they can use, I think their fundings are limited more so than Adventist is. That would be my thing.
Member Ramirez?
So you could go, like we've been doing with the other ones, just to begin with, 50%, right?
You could.
That's what you've been doing?
That would be at 120,000.
So then now we have to go back.
Yeah.
Well, just so that we can continue.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and put in half.
110.
110?
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, can we invite committee member Markarian back?
She here does.
Okay, so at this point, we've done just an initial number against each project. And just to summarize where we're at in our funds, so we had approximately 476,605 available. Under this current scenario, We have allocated 364,370. That leaves a difference of 112,235, excuse me, 112,235 still available to try and round out some of these others. What I'd like to suggest is, what are the projects that, if you don't fund, they kind of are at risk of not getting done. This is just at this point my personal point of view and my analysis. You may have a different point of view, but I think there's some issues at Catholic Charities. I think there's some things they can do so they can piece it apart. But I kind of lean on wanting to give them full funding, given that they have not gotten funding for a significant period of time in the past. So that holds some weight in my head. The Home and Solar is something that we started that process. I feel like we got to finish that part off. And then Door of Hope has some kind of quality of life issues there as well. So anyway, that's just some initial thoughts. I don't know, maybe kind of open the floor. We can start playing with some numbers, but maybe just get some initial thoughts from each of you, and then we'll start playing what the numbers look like.
I like to see Catholic Charities funded higher. Not sure if you could give a complete asking amount. I mean, we could go very close, but just to be fair to other organizations, I would say maybe like 85 to 90% funding. I'd like to see Door of Hope complete their project as well, so I'd like to see them. My second priority would be Door of Hope to go up to at least an 80%, and hopefully they can do some just fundraisings and cover that cost, or at least try to get majority of the units done. And again, Home Amendment, it's important for them to at least have a good base to get started, and I still feel like they need to do some of their own fundraising to complete the program. So I like to see maybe the Catholic Charities go up to 80, the flooring, again,
You're talking about 80% or
80,000.
80,000, okay. So
I mean, that'll probably help them get majority of the work done.
80% on Catholic Charities is 77,000.
So
80% of Door of Hope is about 90,000.
And then,
keep going.
And then Home Amendment, again, if you could just increase to make sure that they have enough to, get additional support from the fundraisings.
But you would have to give them 80% too.
Yeah, so let me just do the math here. So 80% of Home Amendment is 96.
Okay, let's see what that would be.
And then?
Do we have enough to do 80%?
Well, we'll get there. So those are your general.
Yeah, those are my general.
Okay.
Those
So let's get some
three
general comments, and
organizations,
then we'll start doing some math. Committee Member Ramirez?
Well, it kind of keeps you in a precarious place since you don't know what the heck we're going to do with Glendale Adventist. But anyway, this is
we'll come back
this
to
is
that.
what I'm thinking.
Yep.
I would like to see 100% go to Catholic Charities because they haven't asked for anything. I think 120 for, or can I say that?
You can go ahead and say what you want.
For Glendale Adventist, and a full funding, 112 for Door of Hope, and no funding for Home Amendment's either project, because as far as I'm concerned, we've already funded the bathrooms, and Essentia 100%. And we still have some left.
Okay. Committee Member Avedisian.
I definitely want to see the Catholic Charities get the most of their asking, especially with the plumbing issue That's a major problem. Definitely, I want that portion at least to be fixed. So I'm okay with 60, 70% or 80% of the funding to cover. Actually, will cover that and so much more. With the Door of Hope, I think if we can just cover the, as was suggested, 80% or something very close to that, that we can cover at least the units that the residents are living. Those units cover those costs. I'll be happy with. With the home amendment items, like I said earlier, we have already built half of the building. We have to build the rest of it. We can't leave the door half a building built. So I would suggest that we'll have to fund that completely in order to get it done once for all, or else we'll keep seeing the same project over and over and over. In Essentia, it would be great that we can fund them, but it all depends what we can come up with the final number. 50%, I'm okay with it right now. It's not a major issue, just a cost saving, and they don't know really where the money is going to go once the savings is impacted throughout the year. Say that.
Okay. Well, let me. So this is my turn. Here's what I'd like to suggest is I have some ideas too I'd like to throw out. So I'd like to get fairly close, if not fully there, on Catholic Charities. And I say that because they have not received capital funding for a decade at this point. So I think it's fair, whereas many of the others have been receiving yearly capital funds for this project or that project. So I think it's in fairness, if we're going to go do partial funding anywhere that we can, I'd prefer it to be with some people who have been, organizations that have been receiving funds versus the one that hasn't been. That's a counterbalance kind of that I feel. On the home amendment, I'd like to get it fairly close enough for them to maybe fundraise and kind of fill in the gap, but get that solar system done. So I believe that amount that I'm talking about is probably going to be more than the 60,000 we have in there right now. So if we're just starting with those three, maybe if we can just start playing with the math, and let's put Catholic in at the full amount, just to give us a picture, and we can adjust these obviously afterwards. I would suggest on home amendment maybe take it up to 100.
That's
that?
That's the wrong.
But that was the wrong.
What? 2 lines down.
Okay, and then next, I think some talked about Door of Hope, right? Because we're already at full amount for Home and Men, and so Door of Hope, how much we have left? 24,000. If you were to throw the rest into Door of Hope, so I guess that's 84,285. So here's one potential scenario. So this scenario, full funding for Catholic Charities, 50% funding for Glendale Adventist, 84,000 on Door of Hope is actually less than 80%, I believe. Door of Hope was 120. Yeah. 80% would have been around 90,000, so we're probably less.
Now, just
Thoughts?
looking at Essentia, so 50%, 50,000 means that they only have 25% for the project in hand. So I just don't know if this is going to be something that they can work with their private donors. There's just going to be
They
a
already
large-
have almost 50% committed. So we're asking them to go out and get 75%.
And they were hoping we would fund the 50%. They already have their 50, so
Yeah.
they have to do more fundraising. If we were only to allocate 50, this may be a little difficult for them to be able
have
to
to
do the
outbid.
150,000
Right.
in fundraising. So it's just a quarter of their cost.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing from you, to take it one step further, the consequence,
But you
potential
have nothing left, though,
potential
right?
consequence is that, you kind of send them out there, say, here's 50, fundraise the rest. If they are not able to fill in the gap, then they may end up returning those funds, right? To say we haven't been able to, or they may come back for more next year and try and combine it. Mr. Correa.
And Mr. Chair, as I remember Natalie mentioning that they just completed a capital fundraising campaign and that they have funds to cover some costs.
And
So
I
don't
think they're also receiving matching funds from LA County for this project.
Correct, it would be the 100,000 for the match, and then they finish their capital program, so they would probably need to use the capital funds for
To complete it.
completing, if they want to do 100% of this project.
The other option is, and I know Committee Member Markarian cannot comment about what I'm about to talk about, is, if you wanted to go higher on Essentia or higher on Door of Hope, for example, because right now Door of Hope is at 75% at this level, 75% of their proposal. So if you wanted to go higher on any of those and reduce Glendale Adventist a little bit further, that's one way you could achieve that. But right now, our starting point on Glendale Adventist was at, just like the other big ticket items, was at 50%, just as a starting point.
Well, another thing, he said that they're converting the community for senior access. And do they need to do the conversion? Because in the conversion is where they are hit with this new
Yeah, Mr. Correa.
cost.
I just need to know if Committee Member Markarian needs to
Step out
tell us
again.
from these discussions on each of the
All right,
projects.
why don't we do that,
Adventist.
and we'll concentrate on this one.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
The same thing, you're going to hear everything.
I know. To answer your question, Committee Member Ramirez, it is a conversion. It is a larger picture project. We have invested funds from past years. This is the year that we're doing our 88 bathrooms in the building, followed by those doors, and then we got caught with the exterior improvements need to be done. So it is a big effort by Adventist for their wellness center, and they call it Live Well Senior Center now. So it is going to be a major senior center for not only the hospital, but also for the community.
But look where it's located.
It's
a census tracts that we're supposed to be really watching, right?
Well, Committee Member
And we
Ramirez,
know that, however, we have funded them because of who they serve. And so that's acceptable.
Committee Member Ramirez, yes, it is. If this was a different population, it would be an issue. With seniors, they're going to be presumed low income. We do get documentations on income, and the income we show is certainly below the income levels. But it is a senior center. It can be up in that area.
Similar to Home and Amend, since, Home and Amend isn't technically in, part of their facility is in Glendale, part of it is not, correct? So, but it's about the population they serve, is my point. So even though this facility is in, Glendale Adventist is in Glendale, but it is not in the census tract area of South Glendale, but the population it serves are low income by virtue that it's a senior center.
Based on the income information we receive from Home and Emma, yes.
On Homenetman, I thought that one campus, what they call the North Campus, is all in Los Angeles.
North Campus, which is the north part of the, the two campuses, is partially in Glendale and partially in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's 50/50.
Depends on which building you're talking about. Okay, so, again, but
They're
I
two
think...
buildings, though.
Yeah.
They're two separate
Yeah.
buildings.
But
Yeah.
again, to Committee Member Ramirez's point, even though the Glendale Adventist facility is not in the census tract area, it serves the population that does qualify for funding.
And it's documented.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So before, so that we don't have to have Committee Member Markarian going back and forth, maybe, if we can kind of close out if there's any thoughts about the funding level for Glendale Adventist as it currently stands at 50%. And as I had framed it, if you wanted to go higher, because right now we're at even, right, balanced budget in terms of how much we have and how much we've allocated under the current scenario. If we wanted to change anything, it has to come from somewhere. So if there are any thoughts about Glendale Adventist levels specifically, I just wanted to kind of get that discussion out of the way.
I'm thinking that since basically what we're right now, what we have, it's really not going to do them any justice. They're not going to be able to get that solar panels up.
Well, they're getting.
Yes, they are.
They're getting LA County.
LA County, 100,000.
Which is half.
Or half, actually, whatever we pay, they're going to match that amount.
Yes.
Is that the way, Mr. Korea, can you clarify on that?
My understanding is they will get a $100,000 commitment already from LA County.
As long as they get some other commitments.
It's some other commitments, as long as they commit to the project itself. And
Right. So let's assume that they get 100,000 from LA County, 50,000 from us. The total project is at 200,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, total cost of project is 219,000.
And they could have come to us for 219,000, and then we give them half, and then they say, well, then they can go back to the county and says, can you give us the other half? The county will say yes, and they can proceed.
That's not what they did.
Yeah, but that's not what they
Yeah,
did.
They came to us with a 46% of total construction costs.
Thinking that we would take that into consideration, but in fact, it seems like we're using it against them. Because,
not necessarily using against them, it's just the way the funds are, funds available, and what project that's started and it's not done, that we need to complete it, or
so the other option.
Amendment hasn't started either.
So the other option is.
Well, the building is built, in a way.
We're not talking about the building, we're talking about the panels.
I'm talking about the
No,
panels.
it's not. It's not.
I'm talking about the panels, yes. That the building, what I'm saying is like, if you have already funded half of the project on the solar, half of it's done, and you cannot
But it's not
fund the
done.
entire.
He's
well,
talking
it's
about
in the
done in
process.
terms of funding.
Well, we funded
Not in terms of-
13,000, remember? We got it back.
That has nothing to do with it. We funded
Just
already
talking
the
about
half of the project already. So we have to basically put all in together in order to get the project done. In the essential portion of it at this moment, if we don't fund anything in our end, okay, they still have some funds that is coming to them, and then the rest of it they can, or not, the next year they can come in for the full funding. It's not a project that it's already done. But when you go back to the Glendale Adventist, we have already funded so much, the ADA restrooms and everything that's done internally inside the building. Now we funded for the doors. The doors are sitting there, the funding is sitting there, not being utilized because they have to do the exterior construction first before they can utilize the doors and place them. So I would think that it would be probably right that we can add a portion of that 50,000 to the Door of Hope to make it at least 80% funding for the Door of Hope, and the balance of it put it back on the Glendale Adventist, and hopefully they'll get that project done.
So let me just, let me put some numbers against this. So if you got Door of Hope up to 80%, you'd have to put in 89,680. Can you put that into the spreadsheet? See what our deficit is?
The one on top. So there's 45,000 almost.
Oh, something's off here. Oh, yeah, so we're 5,000 over. Okay. You can see the minus sign there. And so if you were to take the 5,000 out of that amount out of Glendale Adventists.
Not the 5,000, 40. Oh.
No, we're over by 5,000.
Oh.
Yep. So Glendale Adventist is there. So Glendale Adventist would
Oh, we
come-
still have the 50,000 there, sorry.
Yeah.
That's for the doors.
Essentia, yeah, that's still there. But that's a scenario where, just to summarize, Catholic Charities gets its full amount. Glendale Adventist gets a little bit less than half. Door of Hope goes up to 80% of project. Hominid Men, it's not the full amount. They're getting 83%.
Which is?
Then bathrooms full amount, Essentia at 50,000. So let's so that we don't miss committee member Markarian the entire time. Anything else anyone wants to say about Adventists before we bring her back in?
If we're not changing the Essentia, we're keeping it in the same way, I guess.
Yeah, so if you have any
Adventist-
comments with regard to Essentia in the context of Glendale Adventist,
Yeah.
let's talk about that now. If not, then we'll bring her back.
You're taking from Essentia and taking from
No.
Adventist?
No, in terms of what we just did?
From what, yeah.
Yeah,
from
no,
what have you-
let me explain again. We didn't touch Essentia. Essentia is still there at 50,000, which is half. What we did was we took a portion of Glendale Adventist and we shifted it to Door of Hope in order to get Door of Hope up to 80% of their requested funding. So basically, we upped Door of Hope, we decreased Glendale Adventist by a little bit to get the Door of Hope 80%.
And then you said 80% for Hominid Men,
And then, yeah,
Which is
83%.
which is 100,000?
Yes,
83%.
83%. And then, again, I mean, hoping that they can raise the difference of 20,000 to complete their project. So is there so discussion, I guess I'd like to narrow us down to so that we can get committee member Markarian back in here is there anything else that affects Glendale Adventist? And I think the next thing up for discussion potentially is Essentia, is what we were talking about. So let me just kind of...
It depends on her, on what she's thinking, if it affects or not.
About Essentia, you mean?
Again,
What are your-
I would suggest that not to fund Essentia at all at this point, and take that funds and, make sure the community charities is already taken care of, the, Door of Hopes, it's already got 80%, I think, is it?
Yep.
And the
Hominid
balance,
Men's
or we can, even Door of Hope, we can fund it completely, and the balance of it, we can put it at the Adventist level, and next year, Essentia can come back and request for full funding.
So should we get...
Go from there.
Okay, that's a completely different scenario. Legitimate. No, I appreciate it. Should we
But
get...
that's the pattern.
Should we get committee member Markarian back in here at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So committee member Markarian, if you can come back into the room. Getting your workout.
I
getting your
do.
steps in. So just to summarize, so we've come down a tad on Glendale Adventist. We've brought Door of Hope up to 80%. Hominid Men Solar is at 83% of request. Home and Etman Bathrooms is at 100%, and so that leaves Essentia at 50%. Committee member Avedisian just introduced a slightly different, not slightly, but a pretty bigger different approach, which is if you were to not fund Essencia's solar at all this year, you could round out the funding for Door of Hope, probably, and Home and Etman Solar, and kind of complete those, and then maybe get Glendale, whatever remaining, into Glendale Adventist. Do we want to take a look at what that scenario looks like for the sake of discussion? Should we plug those numbers in, or is there an objection to?
Before we do that, maybe I just have one question. So the commitment the City of LA has to Essentia,
County of LA.
or County of LA, sorry, would that be standing for the year after? Let's say if they come back next year, that would be my only concern. If we were to not fund and say come back, that funding, if that's not available, then they will have an issue.
Committee Markarian, yes, that grant is only one time, and it's privy upon funds coming from this year. They will not get the leveraging, which is over 50%.
They'd have to
next
start
time.
over, basically.
Or not do it, because that is a one-off.
No, but I mean, in terms of the County of LA, they'd have to start discussions over to see if that they would extend the offer to the following year.
Right, and that's no
It's something we
guarantee.
can't answer, is what I'm saying.
It's right, it's no guarantee of those funds. Those funds
And
are
if the
very...
city of Glendale's not funding it, why would the county?
Yeah. So I'll say, just to keep that 50, that, it just seems that they have some, fundraising efforts that they've talked about, some private donors, and
County of LA.
also engaging County of LA.
County of LA funds it because we are in the County of LA.
Right.
So, they fund things.
But they have
that-
funds, limited funds as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying we just don't know what that scenario would look like. I mean, every government will look year to year. So I don't know the exact nature of the discussions on how they achieved what they got from the commitment that they got out of LA County. So there is some risk there, yes.
I say that, we have a pretty good distribution here, just looking at some of the important projects. Catholic, charities, I'm glad to see that they're going to move forward fully with all their big and small little areas of improvements. Again, flooring is very important, and I think maybe with another small fundraising, they can complete the project. So I feel okay with the rest as well. And Home Etman, they always have great ideas to put fundraisings together, and maybe that 20,000 can be raised through the private donors and others. So the bathroom is fully funded. I think that's to me.
Any other last thoughts, and then we'll
What did you
entertain
decide
motions.
on Essentia?
At 50%, which is
Leave it at
50,000.
50 at 50?
Yeah, which that way they can still kind of move forward, and hopefully their shortfall would be 50,000 on the project. It's actually a little bit more. About 70,000,
Yeah.
69,000 would be their shortfall in the project that they'd have to fill the gap.
And it's also possible that they will start a phase 1 and then come back for a phase 2. I mean,
On a house, isn't it kind of like a smaller building? Not like the warehouse, which is gigantic, where you can actually do it in 2 phases. I'm not sure that they can do it in 2
I don't know.
phases. But anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, I want to introduce a motion to accept line items and the funds as noted on the chart.
And we're going to, we need to do these separately, I think, because of the conflict, correct?
Oh,
But
Yes,
they're going to
Mr.
have
Chair,
to
we'll
read it
do-
line by line.
Yeah.
Do
so-
line by line with Committeeman Markarian having to recuse herself, or not recuse herself, but
Yeah.
not vote on
So
it.
if
But
we're in
we'll
general.
skip 2.
Yeah, so let's go down the line. We'll put the Glendale Adventist at the last one. So if you want to, Mr. Avedisian, just make a motion for number 1 for starters, and then we can go from there.
Okay, I make a motion for Catholic Charities to receive their full asking for $95,900.
Second.
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes?
absent, and Chair Armenian.
Yes. So let's skip Glendale Adventist, go to Door of Hope next. Do I have a motion for that?
I make a motion for Door of Hopes to receive $89,680 toward their flooring project.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes?
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes. Next, we will move to number 4, which is the Homenetmen Solar. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll move to approve the solar system for home element, 100,000 in approval.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
No?
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes. Next, we'll move to number 5, Homenetmen's bathroom Phase 2. Do I have a motion on that?
I will make the motion. Homenetmen bathroom Phase 2, or the second floor bathrooms, amount of $36,420, fully funded.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second that.
You said 100%?
Yes.
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
No?
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes. And then we'll move to Essentia, number 6. Do I have a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the solar projects for Essentia with the amount of 50,000.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
No?
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes. And then committee member Markarian will step out so that we can vote.
She can just recuse herself from
Yeah.
voting.
Do I have a motion for Glendale Adventist?
I make a motion for Glendale Adventist to receive $104,605 toward their project of senior center.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay.
Committee members Avedisian,
Yes.
Markarian, Ramirez,
Yes?
Toshjan absent, Chair Armenian.
Yes. Okay, committee member Markarian can return.
So what's your total?
So our total allocation is we have allocated every dollar that we have available to us for $476,605. To summarize, Catholic Charities at full funding of $95,900 for their proposal. Glendale Adventist at a little less than half, $104,605. Door of Hope for their floor improvement project at 80%, which is $89,680. Homenetmen solar project at $100,000, which represents about 83% of their proposal. Homenetmen bathroom renovation phase 2 at 100%, which is $36,420, and Essentia solar project at $50,000, which represents 50% of their proposal. Okay. Next agenda item.
Item number 5, committee staff comments.
Any closing comments by anyone?
Just want to thank staff and our committee members for collaboration and really working well together to make this process smooth as possible. I know we have different opinions, but at the end, I think we all are very respectful and we deliberate based on what's presented to us, and everyone does a wonderful job. So thank you. And staff, Moses, Jess, and everyone, Iris.
Dita? That's a Dita.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Any other comments? Mr. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do a good job here.
you.
And we miss our pal here, and miss Iris, too. Give our best regards.
Avedisian.
I also want to thank the staff, especially Mr. Chair, everyone, that it's really, for me at least, it's a learning process. It's been a learning process for this last few months, but I think working very closely with Mr. Moses, he has really helped out and has answered every question, even on the long weekends. He has asked questions that I wasn't expecting. However, it's a pleasure to serve and to know that organizations throughout our city are getting funded, and it's helping out every single aspect of our community, from the elderly to the young kids to the homeless. With the small funds, whatever we have, at least it's maybe a drop, but it's a good drop that is going to help out the community overall. So I thank you for serving. I thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the committee members that working with a good heart and good sense of direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to thank staff. It's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork to get through this stuff, and you make the process much more efficient by doing a lot of the legwork in advance. I appreciate all the efforts by my fellow committee members, and I know I also appreciate the disagreements just as much as the agreements, because that's part of the deliberation process. So I appreciate all points of view on all these matters. Nothing's ever 100% black and white on these sorts of decisions, and I think we've done the best that we could with the resources that we have available to us. And thank you, Mr. Avedisian, for your participation. Hopefully this has been a good learning experience for you, and look forward to the next cycles on this. So thank you very much.
Move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Move.
All right. We're adjourned.
We're
Thank you.
adjourned. Thank you.